So, welcome to the first tutorial on HTML. So let's begin coding. And the first thing we do when we want to become a web developer is we start with HTML. Okay, HTML is basically a very simple, basic startup markup language that allows us to create the fundamental structural content on a web page. So every content that you see on your web page, any website in the world, fundamentally it is structured using HTML, and it has been for decades and so forth. Okay, so this is a wonderful and very simple, very easy to follow language. We will try to make this session very quick and simple. Again, we are using W3Schools website as a reference website. So if you have for the first time and if you have used this website, I'm sure every programmer who wants to learn coding has used this website. It's an amazing, fantastic website. So let me use this website as a reference material, and I will be using this reference and codes examples from this website to elaborate what HTML is and how we can use that. Again, since this is an open website, you can use it for yourself as well. So head on to W3Schools.com. This is a website here. Let's go and start HTML. This is the default first page that we get. Now we're going to start with something called introduction here, what HTML is. Okay. So let's begin this and let's start learning HTML from scratch and complete this session. And okay, so before we go further, if you haven't, if you're here for the first time, if anyone you want to learn HTML or web programming or any of these technologies, remember I will be making an entire series of lectures using W3Schools websites, and I will be covering all of these major technologies using this W3 website. So do let me know which technology you are interested in, and I can jump in and create that video for you before I go. Otherwise, I will be making them in a sequence in my own understanding. So if you want to learn more, learn to become coding from Python to data science or whatever technology you are into, from jQuery to React or React Native, let me know and I will try to cover all these tutorials. I'm trying to cover all these tutorials in next 1 year. So this is what we will be talking about throughout the year, and we will talk about and cover all these major technologies using this website and other resources, and it's free resources that are available online as well. Okay, so do send me a shout out, do let me know, right? So that I keep making more lectures. Let's begin. Now, HTML, let's begin with this. So first thing we do about HTML is that HTML basically stands for a hypertext markup language. Okay, it's a hypertext markup language, which basically means that it's a markup language. It's not a script, it's not a programming language, it's not a logical language, it's just a simple markup structural language that allows us to structure the content on a web page. So everything you see on your website is basically structured using what we call HTML. That's the gist of HTML. Okay, it doesn't have like it's not a conventional programming language or imperative programming language like Java, C++, C Sharp, and other languages. Okay, this is a very simple scripting language, and it is amazing. It's one of the best languages I believe in the world. It's so simple, so easy to use because it doesn't have any complex structural rules. It doesn't have any complex syntax rules. It has a very simple and easy to follow concept that you need to understand and you need to implement. Okay, it consists basically series of elements, what we call elements are basically tags that we're going to talk about. And then that's it. That's the whole concept that you have to understand. In HTML we use something called tags, elements. That's it. Okay. And then we use them, the way we use them basically matters how we're going to use them. All HTML elements tell the browser basically how to display the content on your browser. Okay, so HTML basically tells that this is my content, this is how I'm going to structure it, and how you are supposed to display this content on the browser. That's what HTML does. Okay. So HTML element label pieces of content such as this is the heading and this is the paragraph. This is basically what it does. So the way it tells the browser is that okay, this content that I'm writing, this is my HTML heading. The content that I'm writing now is a paragraph. This is supposed to be my link. This is my image. It's like a plain English content. So if you when we talk and when we define something, we do that in normal English, and this is what HTML does. And the only technical aspect to it is that it uses a specific syntax of tag to do it. How does that tag work? Let me show you in an example here. So what this basically is that this is a simple HTML document that displays the content. Let's see what output is first so that we can explore this in more detail. So if I click on try it yourself, so if you are here in the website, you will notice that this is what we basically can do in our HTML. So now we have this simple code and we can, this is again live editor. So whatever changes you make here, you click on run and will be shown output. So this is a sample showing me my heading and my paragraph. So this is a simple HTML page, website that we can say without any colors and graphics. So don't worry about that. This is how basically it works. What this code is doing is, this is basically a simple HTML code. And what it's trying to explain to this browser that I'm going to create a document which is type HTML. Okay, and the way the HTML is going to work, that okay, here's my HTML, it's going to start from here, and this backslash HTML is going to tell the browser started HTML here, and this is where my HTML ends. Okay, so this is what how the browser basically tries to understand this code. Okay, so it said, okay, here's my HTML, I'm starting the code here and I'm ending the code here. Within this, then he said, okay, there's supposed to be something called a head. Within the head, I'm going to tell you a title of my page. So this title is supposed to go somewhere around this tab. So when you see these tabs in your browsers, this is what title does. So it is going to tell me, hey, this is the head. And within the head, I gave another tag called title. So this is going to tell the browser, this is my title. Then this head is closed. Now we talk more about head later on. Okay, then it starts the body. So body is basically what the users see. So this is the body of the page that I can see as a user. So everything the user sees goes inside the body. Head is basically associated with something called the browser information and metadata. Using the head, we tell the browser, hey, this is my metadata or information about my web page. What is the title of my web page? What are the resources, links, style sheets, JavaScript I'm using within my web page? All this additional data basically goes inside the head. And then we have something called the body. All that information that is supposed to be shown to the user is basically put inside the body. Okay. Then inside the body, basically, this is a whole web page area. We have to, here's my heading. So I told the browser that H1, this is my first heading. Okay. This H1 basically doesn't mean the first one. It means the largest font size. So H1 is like the heading 1 means a large font size. So largest font size possible. Show me a heading with the largest font size, make it bold. Then P means paragraph. So I'm writing a paragraph here. So whatever I write inside this basically becomes a paragraph. So this is the basic gist of how HTML is working. Simply in terms. Here's my HTML document. The HTML code starts from here to here. This is information for the browser that, hey, display this title on this. And inside the body, this is what the user needs to see. And here's my heading, here's my paragraph. How do we go further into it? Okay, we use this thing called text. So let me explain that what exactly is happening with these and these brackets here. So what's it's saying is that, okay, here's a tag, and then tag start. Okay. So this is basically a starting a tag name and then tag ending name. Every HTML element has something called a start tag and an ending tag. The tag syntax is that it starts with this less than sign, ends with this sign, or again corner brackets and corner brackets. So this corner brackets, left and right corner brackets are there. This is again left and right corner brackets. So whatever we write inside it becomes my tag, and then within this brackets. So every tag has a start tag, then it has an end tag. So this becomes my end tag because I have used the backslash here. So this backslash indicates that I'm using an end tag. End means ending tag, closing tag. Okay. So we start a tag, we give some content here, and we close a tag. This is the entire HTML code. This is the entire HTML syntax. This is all you need to understand and learn. The HTML is done. All you need to understand that whenever we write an HTML code, we give a tag. Okay. Tag is basically instruction to the browser, what I want to do. Okay. This is all there is to HTML. Okay. For example, if I'm writing a heading, I created a heading tag, H1. And I'm telling my browser that I'm using a heading 1. Heading 1 means that it's supposed to be a largest heading size. Then there is a H2 as well, H3, H4, H5, H6. So I'm telling my browser, hey, browser, create a heading for me. That's it. Hey, browser, I'm writing a paragraph. So P basically is a paragraph tag that defines that I'm writing a paragraph. So whenever we go to the HTML, we wrote this paragraph tag here, which is telling the browser, bro, I'm writing a paragraph. That's it. That's the simple gist of it. So every HTML has to have this tag. Okay, as simple as that. Every HTML we write has to have these tags. And now notice we started an HTML tag, we ended an HTML tag. Then we started a head tag, we have an ending head tag. Ending means using this backslash. So these corner brackets, left and right, these corner brackets, and within this we write the name. Then we started a body tag. So each tag is basically an instruction to the browser telling it what we are doing. Okay. So body means, hey, this is the body area which is supposed to display to the user. Hey, this is the head area that's supposed to go to the head. So we're just segregating our content using these tags and each tag has a certain purpose to it. So this title is like a predefined tag. When browser reads this word title, it understands, okay, I'm supposed to put a title on my web page. That's it. Okay. So when it says H1 means, okay, I'm using a heading. That's it. So I'm going to make this text appear as the largest possible font size. Then it says paragraph. Okay, here's a paragraph. I'm going to put this as a paragraph content. What happens is that when we use this, notice there's a space here. So if I write, for example, hello, this is my HTML example. Okay, so I write it, click on the run, it appears on the next line. However, if I come here and I said, okay, let me put a new line to it, and in this course, we are going to learn about HTML. Done. And I hit run again. So it appears on the same line. Why? Because it doesn't recognize that, or we haven't told it that this is supposed to be on the new line. Okay, we have just told it, hey, this is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. So it will stick to your rules. That's another thing. HTML and web browsers, they work together. Every code that you write will be executed by your web browser. So if I can control A, control C this code. Let me go inside my VS Code and select this folder. And then, so I have opened my VS Code. Let me create a new file. Pasted the same code here. Press Control S. Yes, I trust this author. Control S. And then I will save my code here. So I will say just first hello world. Okay, .html. Now, because I'm creating a web page, every web page must end with an HTML extension. Every web page has to have that. As simple as that. You click on save. This becomes my web page. Wonderful. To execute this code, we execute this code inside our web browser. Okay, so we say go to my web browser, open this file, double click on it. The best way, if you're using VS Code, it has something called a go live feature. It will automatically open the code for you in your browser. Or you can go to the folder where you have saved this file, double click on it, it will execute in the browser. So basically, when we write our HTML code, we can write it anywhere. We save it as .html, then we just double click on it, it will execute the code and it will open up in my browser. Browser is basically responsible for executing your HTML code. So these tags are basically instructions to the browser what you're supposed to do. So in this case, we've told it create a paragraph. We said, okay, I've created a paragraph. That's it. It will stick to your comments. It will stick to your text. It won't do anything by on itself. So if you need a new line, that's a new instructions. Okay, it's a new instruction. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to use a tag called BR, break line. Okay, so what this now means is that I am telling the browser that, hey, after this line, you're supposed to enter a new space, break this line. Once you save it, go back to your code. Now you will notice that there's a space here, new line here. So this is basically the gist of HTML. This is what you need to understand, that in HTML, we use tags. Text tag with these corner brackets, left and right. Within this, we write the tag name. Okay, and then these tags basically give instructions to the browser. Whatever you write inside the tag, based on the tag name, the browser will execute as per the same. Okay. So for every operation, every style, every structuring you want to do, you have a specific text. And you write content within the tag. Now do notice here that I have written BR. This is a starting tag, as we discussed. This starting tag, this is starting tag, this is starting tag, and then there is an ending tag. So body has an ending tag. Paragraph, we started here, we wrote the content, and we ended the paragraph here. We gave title, start tag, ending tag. However, there's no ending tag here. There are a few exceptional tags in HTML that do not have the ending tag feature. They are basically isolated tags. So do keep the thing in mind. We will talk about this. Go on. There are not many, few, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can count them on fingertips, like BR, like HR, like image, and so on and so forth. But we will be talking about them in mind. So do keep in mind that there are few tags that don't have ending. So now, coming back to the point, every tag that we use in our HTML is basically an instruction to the browser. So heading 1 is instruction to the browser. So whatever we write, basically we're telling it to the browser, this is my page, let me display it. How does this code work? Again, so the way that we structure this entire code is we write an HTML tag. So this HTML tag becomes a structure. Everything we write goes inside this HTML tag. Every HTML code goes inside this code. Then we wrote head. Head is like a metadata. This head will tell my browser what I'm supposed to do. So this instructions, this is metadata to my browser. Body again becomes the third component. So the body is what the user sees. Whatever this page area that I'm being shown is basically inside this body area. So even this web page that I have available, everything has been structured in the same way. So this HTML page 1 is heading 1, then there is a paragraph here. So this is a paragraph, then I have this border area, created in a div HTML, and I've assigned a border and background color to it. So you can do everything with that. So this is all different tags and styles that we applied with this thing. Now, the thing to note here is things. Every single HTML document in the world has this simple structure. It has HTML tag, it has a head tag, and it has a body tag. So if I come here and let me rephrase this. So every code that we write in the world in HTML form has this HTML tag. Okay, it will have this head tag. Let me increase the font, the screen size a little bit. Okay. It will have this head tag, and it will have this body tag and backslash body. Okay. That's it. This is the basic HTML structure. Every single web page has this. We tell the browsers that I'm writing an HTML code. We give it a head and we give it a body. Every instruction that is supposed to be for the browser goes inside this head. Every instruction that is supposed to be displayed to the user should go inside this body. Okay, that's the basic logic of it. Browsers tell information like the title. So this is basically a tab. The tab title is supposed to be browser related. That's why we give it there. Then we can have a metadata information about your character sets, about your meta information, about your page width, about your style sheets that you're using, CSS, JavaScript, link, XYZ. So lots of information not to be shown to the user directly, concerned with the browser and goes inside it. So this is basically HTML structure. Now here's the fundamentally wonderful thing about HTML also. It's a very relaxed language. Okay, it's a very relaxed, very cool language. So by this we mean, if I create a head here, this code will also work. So if I take this head, Control X, and I paste it below the body, what should happen now? In other languages, there are rules, there's a syntax, there's a structural rules that we need to follow, like C++, Java, how we write the statements. There is a sensitivity, full stops, comma, spaces, they matter a lot. HTML is a wonderful language. It says to hell with you, I will do whatever you like. As long as you write the tag, I will execute it. It doesn't matter that head is written first or last, it will still execute. Even if you don't write HTML closing tag, Control S, the code will still execute. I don't write, for example, this head at all, and I just gave it the ending tag, Control S. What should happen now? Should I see this title? Okay, so I have a page title, Control S, save it, come here, hit a refresh, and you see it's still there. Exactly. Even though there is no starting tag, even though there's no head tag, there's just an ending head. We haven't even started it. This should be an error, but HTML doesn't give an error. It's just a very chill out browser. It's just, hey, bro, I know what you're trying to do, and I will do it. This is how beautiful, and as I said, it's the most wonderful language that we use. Because keeping in mind, there is structure to it, but the structure is not rule bound. That if you don't use it, the code would still execute. Because you have given this title, HTML, the browsers know that this title is supposed to means to go here. It means that I'm writing a title. It will do this thing anyway, regardless of whether you have written head or not. Okay. The problem would be if I remove this title now. Now browser doesn't know what to do with this thing. That doesn't, even though there's a closing tag, doesn't understand what to do. So if I save it, go back to my code, now you see this, the header has changed. This page title appears on the page itself. What happens now? What do we interpret this? We interpret this that browser, the HTML still didn't give us any errors. It won't give errors. The only problem is that the output is not as what I desired. That's the key thing to understand with HTML, that there is no technically errors, problems in the code. There's what we call the logical issues. We don't even, I personally don't even use the word error. We say there's a logical issues in the code. So the logical issue is that this should be a title and it's appearing in my body. It should not appear here. That's a simple logical issue. There's no error, but it's not what I wanted because I messed up the code structure. Yeah, I can write a title here and I can remove the ending code. What happens now? So if I don't write an ending code, this is just HTML, body, and the title after the body. If I press Ctrl S, go back here, see this works. Wonderful. This is why I love HTML. Okay. Why does this work? Because it knew that it's a title. It says, okay, I'm supposed to put the title here. Done. Page title. Done. No ending tag. But it already executed the code. This is called executing line by line. This is called interpreter based code. So browser actually executes your code line by line. So it reads the title, takes this content and puts it on the title, and then says there's no ending tag. It says, okay, no problem. It just goes for the next instruction. That's the beauty of it. That's why we still get the output page title correctly. However, now this code is in a terrible form. What happens is that now this is what we call a non-recommended, non-professional code, are not according to the W3 standards. So we are required to make sure that our code meets a certain standard. But this is not the rule. Most amazingly, I can come here and I can make this code as well. This like this 3I 3LE. Control S. So now I have a T capital, I small, then again T capital, and then LE. Other languages, this would create a disaster. This would give errors because they are called case sensitive. HTML is not case sensitive. So even if I come here, reset, see this page title appears correctly. Come here, H1, make this H capital, no problem. This is small. The end starting tag is capital, the ending tag is small. Come back here, it still works perfectly. The only problem is if I separate this as a space, now it might get confused. You said, oh, what is this? H1, I don't know this tag, because now it is saying that this is supposed to be a tag. So space would create a problem. Okay. And if you rename it, change right to something else, it will create a problem. It won't know. But capital letters don't matter. Okay. Now here, what happens if I write that heading 1 after the paragraph? Control S. See this? What is happening? The heading has came after the paragraph. So because it's a structural language, it's a step-by-step instruction. It's reading the code step by step, line by line. It is reading HTML. It says no head. It doesn't care. It sees body. I says okay. It reads the paragraph first. It prints the paragraph first. Then it goes here. Then it reads the heading. Then it prints it. I can even skip this body. This should also work. I can skip this body. This should also work. Control S, come here. See this, the code is still working. I'm still getting page title. So I have nothing here. Still the code is working. I can even remove this thing. And there's no ending HTML, no ending HTML. Come here, the code is still working. Why? Because browser needs these tags. As long as it understands the tags, it will execute output. No worries at all. But why we write it? Because it's always recommended that to have this code inside your body, inside your every page, because this is a standard that every web page should have this in this particular structure. It's what we call a consortium. It's just a guideline. Okay, so to do that, now see this, the code makes much more sense. It's always better. There's a starting and ending tag. Just makes the code more readable. Then nowadays with many devices, if you don't follow the exact conventions, the website might not appear as you want it to appear. So this is something to keep in mind. Okay, so do follow this standard. It always makes your code nice, makes your code more professional, helps you when working in a team. Then you can use it. Then also, like I said, use the small letters. This is again one other the consortium that we follow. Every tag that we will now go through will be in small letters. You can use a capital letter, no harm in that. But the consortium, W3 consortium is there. We will talk more about that later on. It says, bro, please, chill, relax, use these, follow these standards so that code becomes a consistent and many developers throughout the world can use it. Okay, so this is just an overview of how HTML is working and how HTML is doing. If you understand this tag, then okay, heading is giving me a tag, paragraph is giving me a tag. If I use a BR, it's just creating a new line to. This is text. So these tags are basically what we do in HTML. Now, all of these rest are basically tags. So if I go inside, for example, heading, we will more about it. Okay, these are all heading tags. Then paragraph, these are paragraph tags. Styles, everything is same. Okay, so we just use the tag name, we give a style. Format. If I go here, sorry, then you will find that this is bold, italic, emphasize, mark, small letters, subscript, superscript. All of these are basically tags. Tag meaning these corner brackets. We will be covering this in the next videos as we go along. We will talk about all these tags in every single video as we go along. So I hope you understand this. So don't worry, in next videos, we will go and discuss as many tags as we can. So this is basically the whole gist of HTML. Okay, so if you understand this HTML, now the next thing is just go through various different tags, understand what the instruction is, what it is trying to do with the browser, and we use it to structure our content. done it. Thank you very much for watching. If you for the first time and you're listening to this lecture, enjoyed it so far, do give me a thumbs up. Do leave your comments what you found interesting, what do you want to learn next, any specific issues you're having, and I'll happy to solve you out. And by the end, don't hit follow me and hit the subscribe button. Okay, subscribe please. So, see you around. Thank you. Okay, so welcome to the part two of this course. Now we're going to talk about more about what HTML tags are and how we can use HTML. In previous session, I talked about in detail what HTML is and what the fundamental concepts of HTML are. If you have understood it, now it will be more easy for us to follow this HTML. So if you're here directly and you haven't seen the previous session, do go and visit the previous session. I will provide the description and information. So just scroll back and do find this previous session so that you understand the fundamentals of this course. Okay, so which is basically HTML introduction and the fundamental concepts, and I talk more detail how it goes. Now let's just jump in and try to cover as many tags as we can in this video. So the first thing that this W3Schools mentions is the editors. Now HTML can be written in any editor, from Notepad to VS Code to brackets or anywhere you want. So you can write your HTML in your web pages, sorry, in your Microsoft Word, Notepad, text editor, Notepad++, anywhere where you can write a text. Basically, you can write this code. Okay, and we have talked about the basic structure of this code already. So what you can do is write it anywhere you want. You can write it in Notepad. I typically use VS Code, so we used this in the previous example as well. So this is much easier and much nicer to control, and there's many things that we can do here. We can have a live view as well, which basically means that you don't have to refresh and save the page every single time. As soon as you write and save, the code is updated automatically. So this is a much easier and wonderful way to do it. So I recommend using VS Code. It's a wonderful tool and you can download and install it free of cost. So that's why it becomes even more wonderful. Okay. So once this is done, let's move on to understanding the basic structure of HTML. So now let's talk about basics of HTML. Okay, so what basic HTML is that in this chapter, it will try to discuss with few basic examples what HTML and what document is. We have already talked about this basics in our fundamentals video as well. So if you have seen that, wonderful. If you have not seen it, go watch this first part of HTML in which I have talked about all these basic fundamentals as well. So, but let me go through this again very quickly. What it is saying is that we have something called HTML document. Okay, it says that HTML document must start with a document type declaration. Now, I don't agree with this. It says must. It should. There's no must in HTML. Okay, HTML is a very context-free language, very rule-free language. It doesn't have so much strict rules. So you can begin your HTML document without this. It will work fine, no problem at all. However, it's recommended. So in fact, I would use the word recommended here, that all HTML documents are recommended to start with. Why recommended? Because first, if I don't write it, my document would still run. I have tested it. It runs on Android, it runs on iOS, it runs on Apple, Windows, everywhere. The document runs fine. But it's recommended because now with so many different browser types, from Edge to Microsoft to Firefox, Google, and so on and so forth. Then devices, each device is its own operating system. Each operating system has its own behaviors. So to ensure the consistency and to ensure that the browsers on every single device on the world understands your web page clearly, we follow these basic guidelines. Okay, I don't even dare to use the word rule. So we say follow this basic guideline, be relaxed, but it's a good idea to use this thing because it's going to tell the browsers that the document that you are going to load is type HTML. Because a browser can show many documents, and because nowadays on internet there are so many different file formats and so many issues with malwares and everything, so letting the browser know what it's trying to do is always the best and easiest thing. Okay, so do follow that. So it's recommended that you use this document metadata, telling the browser that hey, I'm using an HTML. Okay, so this document type declaration represents the document type. It helps the browser to display the web pages correctly. It must only appear once. That's the key thing. Okay, so don't try to repeat it again and again. It usually is recommended to have again at the top of the statements. So this document type declaration is also not case sensitive. Okay, so it's not a case sensitive, so it can be full, small, or large, doesn't really matter. It is what we call an HTML5 standard. So that's, I mean, from HTML5 version that we are using nowadays, this is something of a that do use it. If you use it, fantastic. Don't use it, the page would load fine. Don't worry about that. Okay, but again, recommend it. Then we have something called headings. Okay, so the HTML headings are defined with the tag h1 to h6. So every time we write a heading, we write h1 to h6. This becomes my heading text. So let's explore this. So what we do now here is we have written a simple code. Okay. And if we come here, so what this code says that we have HTML, document type HTML. We wrote an HTML body. See, even they don't have written the head tag because it works fine. So HTML has no rules. You can follow along. So we wrote body because we want to display the content here in the body. And then this says h1, h2, h3, h4. So h is basically for heading. H1 means a large heading size. H2 means smaller from h1. H3 means smaller from H2, H4, H5, H6. So respectively, we get different heading sizes. The way the tag work, we start a tag, we write content in the middle, and then we close the tag. Okay, so this is what H1, H2, H3 does. Heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. So now we're telling a browser, create a heading 1, create a heading 2, create a heading 3, create a heading 4, create a heading 5, create a heading 6. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6. Similarly, we talked about paragraph tags as well. Again, these are discussed in detail in later sections as well. So don't worry about that. So these are for different tags. So in other words, we have link tag as well. Okay, so we link tag allows us to create a link between pages. So if I click on the code, the way we use it, we use an anchor tag or link tag. We say a tag starts, and then we give it attributes. So now what we've written here is something called attributes. Okay, what are attributes? Attributes are like additional instruction to your code. It's telling our browser some additional piece of information that this is supposed to be a link, but when this is supposed to be a link, but when I click on it, what should happen? So we say that when I click on it, you're supposed to take me to this website. So once I click on this, it will take me to W3 website. So this is how we create a link. So every link that you see here, every option you see here is basically using an anchor tag at the back, and there's this simple code here. Every link in the world, every link that even if I use a try to yourself, it's basically pointing me to this particular web page. It's just a link here, a tag. Then we have images tag, and again, so for insert an image, again we use an image tag. So if I try it here yourself, you come here, see this, we have an image. How do we insert an image in a web page? So these are all different images you see here. We just use this image img tag. That's it. Then we give it some additional attributes. So these are additional attributes like a metadata. Okay, so these attributes define that here's the path of my image. I've saved the image in my local folder. You can access it. Alternate is an alternate text that if image cannot be shown, show me this text. What is supposed to be the width of the image? What is supposed to be the height of the image? So we have given it some additional properties in what we call attributes in HTML, defining something about my image. Okay, so notice now what has happened. To give headings, we write a heading tag. To write paragraph, we write a paragraph tag. To create a link, we create a link tag. To write images, we give image tag. Similarly, this is what the entire HTML is. Every single thing that we do basically uses these tags. Okay, and this is what we need to understand. So let's move to the next section now. Okay, let's talk about HTML elements. What HTML elements are. Okay, so I think I've talked all about this in previous session as well. So if you have not seen my previous videos, this is all what I have already talked about, like going into every single detail of this starting and ending tag and what is that HTML is not case sensitive and everything. So this 3 basically goes inside this one lecture. Yeah, let's talk about something called HTML attributes. What are HTML attributes? HTML attributes provide additional information to the tag, like extra and piece of information that help us to understand some more features or add more features to your existing tag. Okay, so HTML, almost all HTML tags can have an attribute to it. Okay, and then they also share attributes. So it's not that each attribute is specific to only a specific tag. Some of them are, but you can actually share. So for example, width and height are there. You can use it for thing, name, ID attributes are there. We'll talk about that later on. But you can have same attributes used in multiple different tags. The basic idea is here. So attributes provide additional information. So every attribute that you use has an additional information to it. Attributes are always specified at the start tag. Okay, so they are always recommended. Again, recommended because ending tag is supposed to close, so it won't have any effect. So if you use there, it won't give you error, but it won't have any effect to it. So we always prefer to use the attributes with the starting tag. Attributes usually come in name and value pairs. So basically what attributes are, that we write the attribute name is equals to and the value within inverted quotations. That's the typical syntax of how we write the attributes within the tag name. For example, we have an anchor tag, so it's supposed to create a link for us. However, when we click on this link, what should happen? So we're telling it that user, when your user clicks on this link, I want you to take me to this website. To do that, we use an attribute called hrefs, hyperreference. Hyperreference is basically again an attribute. Hrefs means that this creates a hyperlink. So when user clicks on it, it will jump to this particular URL. So this becomes my name of the attribute is equals to and the value of the attribute. Okay, so this inverted quotations define the value. Similarly, we have an image tag. Each image tag has an attribute called src. So if you don't use src, basically the image won't be loaded. So if I have an image here, and if I remove the src from here and run the code, there is no image here. Because image tag is there, it tells browser that I want an image here, but which image? So this src is like the source. Okay, so this source is equals to and the path of your image. So once we do that, hit run, now we get the image. Similarly, we have a width and height attributes. These are again attributes. The name of the attribute is equals to the value. The name of the attribute is equals to the value. This is what basically this is all telling us. Okay, so we use width and height as well. We can use alternate attribute as well. So alternate attribute is for images, most commonly used for images. It means that in case if I don't find an image, we use this text as an image. Second, for example, again, we come here and let me just click on this try yourself example. Let's try this example out. So we run this code and we have an alternate attribute. What happens if I remove this src? Control X, run this code again. Now you see this, there's a broken image icon with an alternate text. This is something commonly we have seen many times across websites. Some links are broken, images can't be loaded. What happens? Shows me a basic text. This alternate indicates that if the image is not loaded for whatever purpose, maybe bandwidth issues, maybe path is not there, maybe file was deleted or anything, instead of an image, now show me at least what this image was about. The user can know. Second, it also helps in metadata, what this image is about. But it helps the search engine search certain images. So when we search for an image, basically the search engines look for these alternate metadata text. This alternate will tell me that what this image is about. Okay, so this is basically whole idea behind it. When we use this image, click run, now we get this image. This is what, again, an alternative attribute basically that's used here. Okay. Similarly, one of the common and wonderful attribute we use is called style. We use a style attribute is equals to, and then we give a CSS in between. So this is actually a CSS code. Okay, we use this CSS to create the designs, the style within our HTML. So by default, HTML is very simple, very boring. It's not colorful. It doesn't have much style to it. But when we use CSS, we give it life. We give it more color. We give it more information. To do that, we use this inline CSS where we use style is equals to and the color information. Okay, and then we have a language attribute. This language attribute is used typically with HTML. Okay, so this HTML is going to now tell that browsers that the language used in this is supposed to be English. If you're using French, you can use FR. If you're using Spanish, SP, or Chinese, CH. So different languages have a different abbreviation codes. And if your website is using a specific language, then you need to tell your browser that my HTML has this specific language. This is again not compulsory, but if you are using it, then it's recommended. Okay, so we use this tag. So it can be, for example, in this case, EN US, EN UK, or EN, for example, in general, whatever you want to use. So there's different variations of English as well. So we can use that. Okay, so language is again another attribute is equals to value that tells in HTML. Then the next attribute we use is called title. We specify paragraph with paragraph. For example, I have a paragraph. This is a paragraph, but we give it a title. What this becomes a tooltip. So let me show you what this does exactly. Okay, so I have this heading and I've given a title here. Then I've created a paragraph, and then we have given a paragraph title here. What happens now is that physically doesn't do anything. We can't see anything. But as soon as you hover your cursor over a title or any of this component, basically you see this a pop-up appearing, tooltip appearing, even with the paragraph. This is what this title does. It creates this pop-up for you automatically, no written. All you did was just add this little attribute called h2, have this title to it, and see this pop-up appearing. So you can add this title to any attribute or any tag, sorry. Okay, so in this case we have added the same title to h2, we have added the same title to paragraph, we can add the same title to any number of tags that we use. So if I have an image, I can use that. So for example, let me copy this image here, Control C, come back here, and let's just paste this code here, and then I can add the title here. TITLE title is equals to bracket start bracket close, and I can write this, that girl in a jacket. Control C, Control V. Let me run this code. Here we are. And now as soon as I hover the cursor over it, see this, there's a tooltip there, girl with a jacket. So any tag that you use can have this title attribute with it. As soon as you write it, you get a tooltip. So this is what we mean by adding attributes. When we use attributes, we are giving more functionality to it. Okay, we suggest always use a lowercase attributes. So HTML basically says that use a lowercase attributes. Do not go for capital letters, even though you can. But again, now here it says, however, this W3C recommends lower attributes. What is W3C? It's a W3C standard, worldwide consortium. So because HTML is so error-free and case-sensitive, not error-free, and you can mix and match, so it created a problem a lot. It created the problem of coherency and understanding the code. So there's a consortium, group of people, old guys, they just sit together and said, this is what you're supposed to do, man. And so we end up doing that particular thing. Okay. So W3 consortium tells you use the small letters. So you gotta use small letters. That's it. So this is a good practice, small letters, and this is a bad practice where inverted quotations have been put up. Always use inverted quotations as a value. Again, that's something that's most important because it will create more problems than solve it. So do ensure that you followed that. Again, here title about W3Schools sees that it makes so much confusing that what's happening. So if you don't use inverted quotations, it creates more problem here. So in this example, again, it's using title, but it assumes that this is a single word, and space would basically mean now you're using another attribute and it won't understand it. So it creates a problem with that. Single or double quotation marks, again, this is a debatable thing. You can, however, use both quotation marks in HTML. You can use single quotation and double quotation. However, in case if you want to print a single quotation within your own statement, then you use a double quotation outside and use a single quotation inside. So if I use this example, in this case, for example, this paragraph, John with double quotes, and if I run this code here, see this, title, John with double quotes, has a shotgun to it, it's double quotation marks, and then now John has with a single quotation marks. Meaning that if you want to use a quotation within a quotation mark, you just switch it. So in this case, what we have done is we have used a single quotation outside. Everything is inside a single quotation marks. Because I want this text to be in double quotations, so I use it here. Now, the way it would work is that it will take this John, it would see this, this is a single quotation, it will work fine. So if I don't use this, for example, let me use this thing here. Don't use this double quotations, run code, it's fine. If I come here, the John shortcut Nelson, normal, works fine. If I use the double quotation marks here, double quotations here, and double quotations here, hit run button, okay, come here, see this, now we get double quotations, no problem, still we get the title. The title is working fine, okay, so in title you can use single quotations or double quotations. However, in a certain situation where I want this itself to be in a quotation, so do I use single quotation inside it? So if I do that, now I get a single quotations around the shotgun word. But what if I say now I want a double quotations around the shotgun? So we just reverse it. So we say, okay, what you do is you use a single quotations outside. Everything is now inside single quotations. And then here you use double quotations. Oops. Here what you do is you use the double quotation mark. You put single quotations outside, okay, and then you use a single double quotations inside. Now if you run the code, you will find there's a shotgun is in double quotations. Follow. So this is what basically does. In summary, we talked about all HTML elements can have attributes. We talked about that href is an attribute that we use commonly with anchor. It can be used with other tags as well. Do keep in mind. But Reference basically takes a URL. So wherever we need to include the URL, we use href. We have an src. src is basically an attribute for an image. It specifies a path to an image displayed. Talked about width and height attributes. These attributes usually are used with image, which provides the size information for an image. We used an alternative attribute for an image, which basically provides alternative text to an image. If the image is not loaded, the text is displayed. Again, this alternative is also used by browsers and search engines for metadata and searching purpose as well. Style attribute is there. This is something we will be using more commonly in almost every single tag. This attribute is used for adding a CSS style to our boring HTML tags. Style is used to incorporate CSS styles within our HTML. Then we have used a language tag attribute within the HTML tag to define what HTML web page language is. So it's English, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, whatever you're using. We basically tell the browser using this language attribute. Title attribute is just used to add that extra tooltip information to your text. Okay, wonderful. So I hope you understand that. And now in next session, we're going to talk more about headings, paragraph styles, a little bit more, and then all these topics are going to be covered in next sessions. Do keep following me. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think about it so far, what you want to learn, and what other information can we include. Okay, so, and then again, subscribe, please. Hit that bell icon. Hit it hard. Welcome back. Now let's start with the next topic called headings. Now we talked about the HTML elements and attributes previously and about the basic editors. Now in this session we're going to talk more about something called HTML headings. Now what are headings? Basically, whenever we need to set up headings, we use the heading tag within HTML. First of all, headings are these large texts that we set. There are 6 different stages or types of headings that we specify: heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and 6. So wherever we need heading, basically we need to use this heading tag h1 to h6. That's all. So in order to do that, basically this is exactly what we do. So this says that we have h1, heading 1 is displayed with backslash. So heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5. If you click on try it yourself, this is the code that we get. Now again, if you notice, we wrote a basic document type. We talked about this, HTML and body. This time we don't need to write a head, again, just for an example's sake. Then we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4. What are headings? Basically, they are considered as these large scale headings. These are tags that are basically considered as a block tag. By that we mean that every time we give a heading, it automatically appears on a new line, and there's always a space before and after it. So every heading has some space before and some space after it. Okay, this is basically crucial in understanding that what a heading is supposed to do. Then we can write multiple paragraphs here. So for example, if I write a paragraph tag here, hello, this is a paragraph. Okay, so and then we just close it with \p. Now if I run this tag, execute this code, you will find that this is a paragraph appears here. So this is a normal ordinary text. A heading appears as a main heading. Now we just have to choose which size of heading we basically want. It's heading 1 is considered as the largest heading size. Heading 2, little bit smaller, then smaller, then smaller, then smaller, then smaller. So typically, whenever we need to specify headings within our tag, we use this h6 tags. So if I come back here, that's all the heading tag allows us to do. Then if I move to paragraph tags, within this, we have a next tag called paragraph. What is a paragraph? Just like shown before, this paragraph tag allows us to write text. So wherever we need to write a standard text in our HTML document, every time a standard text is written, it is written within the paragraph tag. So we have a p tag. Okay, so p tag starts, p tag close. So if I try it yourself, if you click on the code, you would find that here's a paragraph. So we can write as many paragraph tags as we want. Each paragraph will appear on a separate paragraph tag here. Okay, this is so heading will allow us to have a heading, and paragraph will allow us to have a heading. So I can give a heading here. So for example, if I give h2, this is paragraph tag \h2 and close it. Now if I run it, basically it should give us the tag. So this is a paragraph tag, and then we get a text here. Okay, now do just remember that this is a capital letter, whereas the first one is small. So in HTML, it is not case sensitive, so we can use whatever type we want. But because we are following document type HTML, meaning HTML5 standard, it's always recommended to follow the small letters. So for every tag that we write, it's always recommended that, hey, let's just use the small letters. It makes things a lot easier to understand and how we basically want to work with it. So paragraph tags, so anytime you need text within your document, we use a paragraph tag. Heading tags for heading, paragraph tag for paragraph. Remember, HTML is for structuring. So to structure the content with text, we use a paragraph. And for heading, we use heading. Now, do remember where this was. For example, if I set this into a multi-line, so this is as a second line, okay, and then full stop. And then if I write this is now the third line, okay, and then I just leave a full stop. If you want, you can give it. So now we have 3 lines in our paragraph. If we run the code, you will see that all of the text appears on the same line. That's because HTML considers this as a single line statement based on a tag. It does not understand the new line that you entered on your browser. Okay, so it will understand that this code is paragraph starts here, this tag starts here to this point. This is all entire our paragraphs. So that's it. There's no new line here. If you want to give a new line, then we use a tag called BR. We will be talking more about this tag later on. So BR basically stands for break line, or in other words, new line in simple cases. So if I write this now, this will basically mean that we now want to use a new line after every paragraph. So within one single paragraph, if you have multiple lines and you want to make sure that each line appears on a new line setup, just like shown here, you basically need to use BR. Okay, that will simplify the things. Now there is an alternative to that as well. So if we come down here, this is basically how paragraph tags is displayed. So even this is also showing us so that if you have multiple lines of text, all lines will appear on a same line, regardless of how many enters or spaces you go. But every time you use a paragraph tag, after each paragraph there is always a new line. So that's built in to paragraph. That's why it is also called a block tag. What is exactly is a block tag? We will discuss this more detail later on in the sections. But block tag basically means that every time you use a tag, it will automatically insert a new line and some space between it. So there's a new line and there's a space. Okay, so this is new line coming on new line. This is because there's so much text, so it's wrapping around. So if you just resize the content area, you would find that, hey, it's all okay. Okay, it will just appear on a new line if there is a new line. If there's no space, it will automatically wrap to the new line. So this is paragraph tag for us. So if you go back to the paragraph tag, this is what we basically use. Then in order to separate the lines more evidently, we use something called HR. Okay, so we talked about BR for break line, but there's something called HR as well. So if I click on HR, now you see this simple line that appears here. This line basically indicates a simple horizontal ruler. So HR tag here is basically using for HR. So we use a heading, we use a paragraph, and then there's a HR. So what output we get, hey, this is heading 1, this is some paragraph tag. And then if you want to give a divider, a separator, or a simple ruler just to indicate that this is a break of paragraph, we use another tag called HR. Okay, similarly, we use HR at any point as we want. You can use HR in the middle as well. So HR basically will not insert a new line, but if you run it, so now I have this is some HR other text. If I run it, you will find this is the line. So this is some break line and then HR. So it inserts a new line and then adds that the divider, and then the text goes on to new line automatically. Okay, so it behaves like a break line as well. It will add a new line to it, but it will insert this ruler as well. So in other words, if you don't want this ruler, then we use this line break, BR tag. Okay, so we talked about this earlier as well. BR basically will add this break line option to us. So if I click on try it yourself, now you would find, hey, this is a paragraph, BR line break. So now you notice that every time we insert a BR, the point where the BR is inserted, it will automatically move to a new line. A paragraph, BR tag, and then B tag, a new line appears. So BR is basically used wherever we want to specify the break line parameter. Within this, then we use HR to insert a ruler, or BR just to create that new line effect. So paragraph tag basically allows us to use a paragraph as long as we understand what text we want to insert. If you want to use the new lines, BR tag is most commonly used. Sometimes we use HR as well to create that nice effect at the end of a paragraph or at the end of the block. Okay. In this case, there's one other way we can do that as well, which is called the pre-tag. So for example, if you have this poem, okay, and you want to display this poem exactly as it is. So if I use this as a paragraph in HTML, spaces and new lines are ignored. It's telling us that message here. So if you check this code, it basically means that every time you use paragraph tag, it will ignore all the spaces and the new line. So even though you write it this poem very nicely and very properly formatted, but if you see here on your browser, it will give you this entire text as a simple content, which sometimes doesn't look nice. So how do we avoid it? We use a tag called pre. So if I come here and I type in pre, and then ending tag also becomes pre. Now if I run this code, you would find that it appears exactly as we have written it. This is what we call the pre-formatted tag. Okay, pre-formatted tag means that now it will consider the spaces and the new line. So you can use paragraph tag. At certain times, we use a pre-tag as well. So you can use a pre-tag as well, which will basically mean that the text will appear exactly or almost exactly as the way you have written in your code. So in your code, if you have given a new line, this will be showing a new line. If this in your code you have given a space, it will show that space. So for example, if I come here and I enter multiple spaces at this point, and then rerun this code. Now what should happen? So if I have inserted the tag here, come here, see this, it's ignoring the spaces before it within the content area. So if you run this code again and double check, see this, now we have our spaces. So previously, if you don't give spaces, it will consider this as normal. But if you do give spaces, pre-tag will consider this that you have deliberately inserted the formatting. So it says that it will insert all the spaces and the new line as you go. So this is exactly what we talk about in this pre-tag as well. So it is considered as what we call a pre-formatted text. Okay, this pre-formatted text means the text basically will be formatted as you specify according to your code that you write. The font by default is Courier font. Okay, it is a little bit different from what you see in paragraph. So if you check the outputs here, the paragraph has a different font and font size, whereas this is a Courier font of different little size. However, you can customize this with CSS, so we usually don't worry about that much. Okay, so now by this basically but most of the websites that you explore, and you will find that 90% almost we use the paragraph tag, because it just simplifies the thing, and then it allows us the control to insert the space and the new line wherever exactly we want to insert. So it's not like exactly fixed. So we set these spaces and lines with our code, which makes sure that our text appears correctly on every single device, rather than relying on browser to automatically interpret my new line and space in a pre-tag. Okay, so pre-tag is there, but somehow every web page that you explore, you would find that it uses this uh, paragraph tag, and then we control the space and new line with br or other space parameters. Okay, so in this session we talked about headings, h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, h6. You use headings for heading text. We talked about paragraph tags. We talked about our the way the paragraph is displayed, the br, hr, and the pre-tags. Okay, I hope this clarifies some things about how text itself is formatted on our HTML. Okay, so to wrap this up, this is final. Then next we will going to talk about styles a little bit more, and in next session. So see you in next class. Hello, welcome back. In this today's episode, we're going to talk about HTML styles. Okay, previously we did talk about something called paragraphs, headings, and we have been discussing attributes and elements. Now, one of the key attributes within HTML is called style. This is an attribute that allows us to control the design, the aesthetics of our HTML tags. By default, HTML is very dull and black and white, but using the style tag, we basically are allowed to incorporate CSS within our HTML and provide what we call design elements to it, such as giving colors to our content, changing the font, changing the size, and many more things can be done. Okay, so how do we use this style? So for example, if I want to change my text into red or blue or change its size, for example, we use the style tag. How do we do that? If you scroll down into this again, as W3 pages, it tells us exactly. So basically, setting the style of an HTML can be done using the style attribute. So this is the key thing that you have to use. Now, how do we use attributes? We have already discussed this in previous session. Basically, you need to write tag name. Now, this tag name means that style is applied on every single tag that you can use in HTML. Okay, means that it can be applied, the same aspects can be applied on heading, paragraph, or any other further tags that we will be using. You will be allowed to use style with it. That's the key thing there within attributes that we need to understand, that when we use attributes, basically attributes are shared across tags. Okay, they are not specific to only one or two tags. There are certain attributes that are specific, but in this case, this is basically something shared. I will show you exactly what I mean. So now how do we use it? We give any tag name, paragraph or heading or whatever tag you basically want to use. We write the style is equals to and property colon value. Now that's the key thing here. What is property colon value? This is actually CSS code. Okay, this is actually a CSS code that we write, and we tell our HTML that, hey, this is a CSS based style that we're going to use. What is CSS? How do we use it? We will be talking about this as we go along in further sections, and then do follow along this channel so that I will be talking more of CSS completely in detail. So don't worry about that. There's a whole complete tutorial on complete CSS and how we use it in XYZ. So this typically in terms of CSS language is known as inline CSS. So we use inline CSS within our tag name. Inline basically means that with the tag name we provide CSS style, and the way we use CSS is we give it a property colon and its value. Okay, so this is generally thing. So how it's done, for example, I want to change the background color of my content. So I specify body, again style. Now body is a tag and I want to change its background style. So how do I do that? I simply use style attribute is equals to, then I use background color. Now this becomes my property colon and its value, the color name. Okay, that's how it is done. So we specify a property, we specify its value separated by a colon. So if I check this code out, this is how it basically should look like. So as soon as the page loads, notice the page is blue in color. By default it's usually white, right? But because I've set the style on a body or tag, body again means anything that the user sees. This entire page area is called a body, and we want to change the background of the body. To do that, style attribute background color colon powder blue. So this becomes powder blue. So for example, if I don't like powder blue, I can change this color to, in other words, green. Okay, so as soon as I type in green, hit color, it becomes green. Now I can apply the same style on multiple different attributes. So I can say, hey, listen, style, let's apply on h1 is equals to double quotation marks, because we're specifying an CSS property, and I can say color colon, in other words, red. Now this basically means that I have specified the h1s to be of red color. As soon as I hit red, it becomes red. This is because we have provided it a style. Same thing I can do with paragraph tag as well. So if I go inside the paragraph tag, I write the style attribute is equals to double quotation marks for the style. I can say make this guy's color, for example, yellow. Okay, and then hit run, and this becomes yellow. Similarly, there are multiple different styles that we can use within our HTML code. For example, if I just zoom into this thing, for example, if I want to specify more color, so I can say colon semicolon background color. Okay, background dash col or color, and I can say, hey, make this guy's background color, for example, blue. Okay, now what we have done is we have used two different styles within one same style attribute. Okay, so we have set its color, font color to be yellow and the background color to be blue. So as soon as I hit red, you see the background color becomes blue. This is basically what styling allows us to do. Now what we can do with this, or we can do every single thing. Whatever you want to do, you can specify styles, and there are tons of styles that you can apply on paragraphs and headings, backgrounds, foregrounds. Entire web pages, the entire game of designing a web page basically resides within CSS style, and there are ton of CSS properties and its values that we can use. So this is basically what it's trying us to do, that hey, listen, there are CSS styles that you can use, and this is what basically we will be doing. So if I come down here again, it does the same example. It uses a background color for the heading tag and background tag for the paragraph tag, background style for the paragraph tag. Do keep in mind that because the style is an attribute, it comes inside these curly brackets. Okay, so inside these curly brackets we specify the style. Okay, it's not separated, because it's provided within the this corner brackets. It indicates that this is belonging to this particular tag. It's an attribute of this tag and it's going to use that. Okay, so we can set the text color using the color attribute. This is what basically it allows us to do, that hey, in order to use the text color, you can use color attribute colon blue, red, green, orange, whatever colors you want. We will talk more about colors in the colors episode, colors section. We come into that point, so you can find out what different colors we have available in HTML, in CSS, and what we can use that. In a nutshell, we use style to design various different things. And as I said, there are a ton of different properties that you can do. So for example, if you want to change the format of your font of your tag, you use a font family, Verdana, Courier, or whatever family of fonts you want to use. You can change the font size as well. So we can say, hey, font size, make it 300%, so it becomes 300% large. So if you try this code out, if I execute it, see this, now the text is huge because we have set it to 300%. Again, do keep in mind we can use multiple styles as well. So for example, I can say color is equal colon red, and because I'm going to use multiple styles, I need to use this semicolon icon. So this semicolon here basically indicates that this is one style property. Okay, and now after the semicolon, this style property ends, and then now we have a second style property. So if I run it, this becomes red. I can specify third as well, making sure there is a semicolon so that it ends one property, and now it will take this as background dash color, and then we can say colon. It can be, for example, again blue, and then we just hit run here, so it turns blue. Now do note that at the last property we have not specified the semicolon. It's technically not necessary, recommended that you make it a habit of giving semicolon after every single property, but because we have not used any property after the last one, so sometimes it's okay not to give a semicolon at the end. So if you read the codes online, your tutorials, sometimes you don't see semicolon, it confuses that why there's a semicolon or not. Basic logic is same. If you are using just a single property, so for example, if I omit this out, only one property is there, color red, run, it will take effect because there's only one property, no semicolon is needed. But when we use multiple properties within the same style attribute, then it's always recommended that you use semicolon to separate the various different styles. The last one doesn't need it because there is no property after this, so it's all okay. Okay, excellent, wonderful. So this is how basically styles are into play. We can use a simple style called text alignment. Again, this is a very fun one. What text alignment does, that it applies a center or left or right justification to our tag. So if you take this and then come back here, and I can specify this style here, again semicolon and then control V, I just copied it very quickly, now becomes center alignment. So if you use center here, it becomes center alignment. If I make it, for example, right, hit run, it becomes right alignment. Okay, so see this, using CSS we control the appearance of our content. That's the basic logic of CSS, that allows us to design and control the appearance, the front end of our HTML. HTML is used to structure the content, that this is a heading, it is supposed to be large size, supposed to be bold, it's supposed to have this thing. So it's there for structuring. For designing aspect, this style attribute is used with the CSS elements to add that additional properties. Okay, so within this we discussed about style, we discussed about background color, we discussed about color, font family, font size, and font text alignment. These are very few of the basic CSS properties that we have available or we have discussed. Technically we have, as I said, ton of other attributes, more than 200 different styles that are available, that allows us to control every single aspect of how we want to display our web page. So every beautiful web page that you see has CSS at the back end that allows us to design. And for that, do follow, subscribe this channel, please, so that you can get these lectures. I will be posting the complete CSS tutorial in future days as well, so that you can learn about all about CSS there is to do. So this is what about basic about CSS. Within the CSS, we can add something called formatting. So if you go inside the formatting now, there is various different things that we can do without CSS and add some of the basic formatting tags within HTML. Okay, so I will talk about this in next session. So hopefully you understood up to this point. So in next session, we're going to talk more about formatting tags within HTML. Hi guys, welcome back. Now we're going to talk about HTML text formatting tags. Okay, so what are text formatting tags? These are basic tags that allows us to control the formatting of our HTML content. In previous sessions, we have been talking about styles, paragraphs, and headings, how we use heading tags and paragraph tags, and then use a style attribute to give some design aspect to our HTMLs. But moving on forward, today we're going to talk about something called formatting. Now, formatting allows us to control the basic formatting of our HTML content. This is again related to structuring the data properly. This does not give a proper styles. Styles is something in terms of design elements. So this is something we don't say that it's a design elements. Again, this is a part of what we call pure HTML's structuring of how the content is supposed to be designed on the page. We can use CSS with each of these tags as well, text formatting tags as well. So let's talk about what more exactly are the various different text formattings. So HTML does contain several different what we call formatting tags, such as bold, such as italic, subscript, and superscript. How we use them, let's learn about that. Okay. Now, before going further, if you are enjoying these lessons and you want to learn complete HTML and CSS and all these different technologies, this is a dedicated channel that will use W3 Schools as a primary reference website, and it will allow you to learn all these various different technologies. So HTML is there. We will be learning about CSS, JavaScript, Python, and so on and so forth, all of the technologies. So do subscribe and follow me and give your feedback and comments. Let me know what you are learning up to this point. Okay. Thank you. Let's begin. So now let's talk about more about HTML formatting elements. Now, HTML formatting elements, there are various different tags for that. Okay, and each of these tags provide a formatting aspect in our HTML content, such as making the text bold, such as making the text strong, ensuring the text is important, creating that bold emphasis. If you want to make italic, we use the italic text. If you want to make the emphasized text, we use the emphasized EM text, which basically emphasizes the text appearance. The mark text basically allows us to create the mark effect. The small will make the text smaller. Delete will create a line across the text. Insert will ensure that or give appearance of the new inserted text within the document. Subscript and superscript, again as self-explanatory, will create this subscript and superscript effect. How do we use these tags in HTML? Let's learn about that. So this is, for example, bold tag. Wherever we want to make our text bold, we want to use this bold tag. So if I click on this and we get a simple HTML tag. Now see this paragraph. This paragraph is just the standard simple paragraph available to us. Paragraph, this is a normal text, and you can see the output here. The text is normal. Whenever we specify or whenever we want to make a text bold, we use the B tag. Now, as discussed previously, some tags have this feature that whenever you use a tag, that content automatically appears on the new line and there's a space before and after it. When you use a bold tag or any of these formatting tags, they are known as what we call inline tags, meaning that when you use them, there's no new line added, only the effect is added. So the bold is basically an effect, a formatting effect that will make the text bold without adding a new line. That is why we can use them as a nested tags within other tags as well. So I have a paragraph tag, I use a bold, this is a bold tag, and I specified it. And this is why the text appear bold. Now, another key thing to learn here is that if I use the paragraph and backslash paragraph, so if I put it here, this is my bold tag example. So we have example here. Now I can also specify this B tag just in front of this single word as well. Okay, so now what I've done here is that I've used this B tag as a very simple bold appearance. So now what will happen, each text is normal, only the single word is bold. To do or to achieve this particular effect, we use the B tag in front of the bold word itself. This means that I can use the tag as many times or wherever I want before the any content that I want to make. So for example, in this case, I can say, hey, I want this tag, this word to be bold as well. So I can use the backslash B and B here. So now if I run this code, what happens, this example becomes bold. So this is bold, this is tag, this is bold. So we can use bold any number of times as we want, wherever we want to use it. The key thing here to remember is that what happens if I remove this uh, backslash B here. So what happens if I remove this backslash T? So what if I execute it and there is another B here? So no problem with that. If I execute now, see bold, tag, example, all these three words are basically bold. Why tag is bold? Because HTML reads this as bold. Starting the tag, no problem, wonderful. Okay, so it says bold, but then there is no ending tag, so it assumes that this text is also part of this bold effect. Then it goes and reads, hey, there's another nested bold, and okay, no problem, wonderful, I will accept this. Then it goes an example and the bold tag ends, so it assumes that, hey, this bold tag is still there. What happens if I write another line here? So this becomes, for example, another line. What should be the effect of this? Will this line appear as a bold or not? Sometimes we pop these questions in various different scenarios as well to students. Because there's a bold tag starting here and there's another bold tag starting here, but there's only one closing tag. We have talked about tags. Every tag in HTML has a starting tag and ending tag. It's a part of it. If I write a content here, but there's no closing tag in one of these bolds, if I run it, that another line also appears as a bold. Why it's appearing as a bold? Even though if you write BR here, so for example, if I write BR break line here and hit run, this comes on a new line and we talk, but still appearing as a bold, because the browsers read this bold and understands, okay, we have closed this bold tag, but we have not closed this bold. Because one of the bold tag has not been closed, the effect of bold continues. So if I write another line here, for example, second line here, okay, control S, and if I go here and add a br, oops, br here, okay, if I run, this again appears as a bold. So as many content as I write, all of these contents will become bold, because we have not provided it a closing tag. So if I now say, listen, I understand it, but now let me close bold here. If I close the bold effect here, hit run, see this second now becomes a normal text. This no longer bold, because we have closed this tag here. So this b starts from here and ends here. Okay, this b starts here and ends here. Okay, understandingly, every tag has a starting tag and an ending tag. The effect of that tag will carry and continue until you close it. So if you don't close it, the effect will continue and will drop on other content as well. Here's one other question for you. So what if I delete this bold and create another paragraph, backslash p? uh, Holy crap, another paragraph. Okay, and complete spelling mistakes. P-R-A-G-R-A-P-H. Okay, so we have another paragraph here. What will happen with this? Will this paragraph appear as a bold or not? Keeping in mind, bold starts, bold close, understandable. This bold starts, but there's no closing here. I deleted the bold tag. But the paragraph has ended. Now a new paragraph has started. If I click on run, even the new paragraph appears as bold. Why the hell that happened? Because we did not close the bold. So the browser assumes that the bold is still ongoing, even though the parent tag has been closed and the new tag has started. But the bold tag effect continues. This is an excellent feature and a terrible feature at the same time. Because if you forget to close one tag, the effect will replicate and continue to take in its place. Okay, and so this bold will continue as long as we, and sometimes it just drives crazy that what the hell certain effect is there. Bold is very evident, but sometimes there are certain other tags whose effect will create a catastrophic structural flaw in your system if you don't remember to close it. That's why a rule of thumb for me is that whenever I need to write a tag, I write a tag and then I close the tag, so that I know that I have closed the tag, and then I go and put the content inside that particular tag. That way I know that this tag is properly closed. So if I start a tag, I give a content and then I immediately close it before I do anything else, ensuring that there is no further problem with it. So I start a bold tag, I give a tag and close. Now if I run it, only the bold word appears as bold, tag is normal, example appears, and everything else becomes normal. So this is again what we call the scope of each tag. So the scope is quite important to understand. Okay, so I hope you follow this thing along. Now this was basically the bold tag. Then we have something called a strong tag. What is a strong tag? Let me tell you what the strong tag is. Basically it's almost same as bold, but it just creates another effect within our system. So if I run it, it appears bold. Okay, so it's, in a way we say, it's an another way of making sure your text appears bold. Okay, so strong will make your text a little bit bold, which is bold tag as well. That's why 99% of time I usually prefer to use bold itself. But somehow there's a tag, it's like a synonym, another way of making your text appear prominent, little bit thick and black in color. Okay, so I hope you understand that. So we have a strong tag here as well. Then moving on further, we have emphasis and italic. Basically again they also do the exact same thing. So if you use italic, the I tag is basically for italic text. If you remember italic, if I come here again, bold, I can make this I italic and then I backslash I italic. Okay, so if I run it now, see italic text appears a little bit I. So now what we have done here is that we have a text. It can be a word, it can be a line, it can be a sentence. Whatever we write between these tags, the effect of those tags will apply only on that. If I don't close the I tag here, again same thing, hit run,
everything after the I becomes italic, even though there are multiple different paragraphs. See this one paragraph, there's another paragraph, this paragraph ends here, but still the scope of I will continue because we have not closed it. So wherever we close it, it becomes nicely done up to that particular point. Now, one rule of thumb also, or one good programmer's approach is this as well. So if I write the tag here, okay, see it's the system is also indicating in the red line, means that it says it's not okay. Okay, there's no error. It's not an error, but it's not okay. Okay, so if you see the output, the bold appears italic. Agreed, no problem, love you about that. But at the same time, there is an issue is that we have started an I tag bold, and then we have closed the bold tag instead of closing the I tag first, right? So I appears inside the bold, so technically it should be that this I, or the closing tag I, should appear first because it's inside it. So if I put it inside, now see they are all changed in color. The effect has no change. HTML says, as per HTML, it's no error. Remember we talked, HTML doesn't give an error. It says, oh brother, whatever you write, as long as you write in the correct form, as long as you follow my rule, I have absolutely no issue with it. So technically HTML is no issue. The browser will also display your content correctly. But as per coding standard, as per professional programmers, when you want to work, it's always in a good practice that if you start a tag, you close it. Then if it has a nested tags like bold and italic, you close the inner tag first, whichever is starts last ends first. Then we have bold tag, it starts second and close second. That way we have a better way of coding. It's always a standard hierarchy way of coding our structure. Okay, and this is something that's very important, especially when we go into advanced HTML, when we work with divs and create more web pages, more complex web pages. Then starting and ending points do matter a lot. So do this scope is basically for every single tag. Do keep the thing in mind. Okay, this is not only related to these formatting tags. The whatever we talk about tags, basically it's throughout every single tag. It's applied on every single tag, right? So even bold, italic, whichever tag you write first. So in this case, if I write, for example, u tag, which is for underline, okay, so if I write u tag outside the b, so because this tag comes as first, it should end as the last tag. So backslash u, this becomes a good practice. So if I write, oops, no, I don't want to save it. Okay, I'm just having a bit of saving it again and again. Let's run this. So now bold appears underline, perfect, no problem with that, because we have it started the u tag as a first tag. So and then there are inner tags after that, it ends. So the first tag becomes the last ending tag. Okay, it's generally a good practice to do that. So we have an I tag which creates an italic, and emphasis also actually does the exactly same thing. So if you use the em tag, so if I come here, write em tag before inside and backslash em. So if I run this code, now you'll find that this is also italicized, same as this one. So bold has, in other words, two variations. We use bold or strong. Italic has I or em. It just italicize the tags at certain points. So this is both exactly same thing. Small will basically make your text smaller. So if I want to make a specific thing smaller, so for example, I can say, hey, SMAMM small, and then I can say backslash small. If I run this code, you will notice this tag text just appears a little bit smaller than the normal font. Just to create that emphasis, more specifically used in mathematical equations or at certain points in terms of prices. If you want to write the currency or certain values, that needs to be a little bit smaller than the normal font. So instead of doing more changes to the content or changing the font style to a larger values, we just simply use this small tag to make some tags smaller in our standard content. So now you can see that we already have created a very complex paragraph text. Again, a professional pro tip is that if this is the case, I use in this way. So we have b tag, then we have something called italic tag, we give a bold italic, and then we start this tag here, and then we go and then I close this u tag here. Then I go back here in small tag, because there's a tag here. Then now I go start this thing here, add a br line. So now see this becomes a professional way of writing. More professional programming would allow us to understand this code more easily. And now you can see the hierarchy as well. So we have u tag starting here, ending here, then inner tag has a b tag, then inside the b tag we have a I. So this makes content reading and programming a lot easier if you follow the programming convention and write the code in appropriate manners. Okay, so this is whole HTML. So if you understand this basic structure of writing, this applies throughout whole HTML tags. Okay, so even if I'm writing here, sometimes if it's one tag, we can be lazy and we can leave it to this point. As I said, professionally, as a professional programmers, we always recommend to keep our code neat and clean and professional looking. So this gives a more appropriately decent looking visibility within our system. Okay, we try to follow that, and this rule applies throughout it. Then next we have a mark tag. Basically, do not forget to buy mark milk tag. This basically, if I just click on this one, make this another simple tag, so this will just create a highlighted marking effect. Okay, so if you use mark in front of a milk, this is commonly done. Again, in news articles and many places we find this, the highlightation there just to indicate certain highly important text. We use the mark tag here. Let's include the mark tag in front of the bold. So if I come here and I say, hey, mark this guy and backslash mark this guy. Okay, so this basically means that now my bold appears marked. Again, because we have used a double nested, I would professionally try to do this in this manner. Okay, so now this basically means that we have underline, inside underline bold, inside and bold italic, and then see this, the closing hierarchy is followed. And because this is a single line final tag, so I just put it in one line, now bold. So as you can see already, it's very nice and neat and clean and easy to read. Okay, it makes things much more professional looking. So we have a mark attribute as well. Finally, delete tag is basically used to create a delete line. So if I come here and then inside the milk tag, I can use, I said, hey, I don't need milk anymore, so I can say delete and backslash del, delete. Okay, so if I run this code, now you see there's a line going through it, and then we can say instead of milk, let me just buy for example creamer, and then we can hit run. So this means that initially I was going for milk, but now I need this thing. This is a common mark line that you see on online shoppings where they change the price and they keep that previously the price was, now this is the new price. So the previous price is written with a cross and line going through it, indicating that, hey, the price has been changed. So a good way of showing your previous changes or comments that, hey, this is no longer valid, but it's there for your reference that this was something there, now it's removed and this is the basic new value. So for that we use the delete del code. Okay, in Microsoft Word, if you're coming through, this is known as a strike through. Okay, we call this a strike through as well. Insert is HTML element that defines text that has been inserted into a document. Okay, browsers will usually indicate this is an underline. So if I click on this one, it just basically creates an underline underneath the content in a way that allows us to load up. Okay, if it's taking so long, let me use insert in front of the creamer. So if I say ins and then come back here and then use backslash ins and run this code, so now there's an underline here. So in other words, this is a second way of using our underline tag. So I can say, hey, I've given another underline, so you can use that, and voila, let's just create this thing like this. And then because we have done this, oops, and there. Okay, so let's make things neat and clean. Now again, here the problem in as a programmer, the paragraph, because we are doing this alignment and hierarchical representation properly, paragraph starts here, but we have ended here. Again, not a good way, not a good appearance. As a programmer, I want to make sure it appears somewhere around here. So that way I know paragraph starts here, closes here, and then all of the content are basically tabbed, structured in a proper way. Mark has multiple inline comments and they are represented here. See this, much easier to read. So as a programmer, professional programmer, always do try to structure your code in a professional manner. Anyway, so insert is there. Now insert is again exactly same as underline. So bold has a strong, uh, italic has emphasis, underline has what they call insert tag. Basically it gives an underline to our content. Finally, going into subscript and superscript. So wherever we need equations or subscript or superscript tag, basically we use that. So for example, let's write another paragraph tag here, backslash p. We can say the value of x is power 2. So because we want to write this as x power 2, so we can say sub and then backslash sub, and here we go, and then we write this subscript. So we get this superscript, subscript, sorry, in this case. So x power 2 is there. If you want to write the content in more formal way or in form of upper, so we can say instead of sup, sup and sup, and then if I hit run, we get a superscript and subscript. Okay, so in form of mathematical notations we write this very commonly. Usually we do that. So whichever number we want to go, so in this case 2 is supposed to be superscript, so before 2 I wrote this text. So this case again I will try to use this as a separate, but in terms of equations sometimes we just put it like this as well, makes things easy to read for us. So subscript, superscript is there. So these are basically the most common tags that we use. So today we discussed these formatting tags within HTML. Bold will make it bold, strong again bold, another form of making bold. Italic is there, takes text italic, but emphasize again will make it italic. So these are two same things. Then we have insert and underline. Insert and underline will basically add the underline or beneath your text. Then we discussed about mark, the highlight, it will highlight the text. Small will just reduce the size of the content a little bit, if you, for certain purposes, and depending on how we structure the content. Then superscript, subscript is there. Okay, so these are collectively known as formatting tags. These are the basic formatting tags in HTML. Like discussed earlier, in HTML now all we have to do is look for these tags. HTML as simple as that. Wherever, however you want to use it, it depends up to you. You can use it multiple times. The content structuring completely depends up to you, how you structure your web pages, as long as you understand that there is a tag for every single thing. Okay, and we just have to learn these various different tags. So all these next sessions that we will be carrying on, we will be talking about these tags as we go along. Okay, so I hope this is clear. I will end the session today, and next we will talk more about quotations and comments, and then for forward link, carry on this whole syllabus. So I hope you learn a lot. Do leave me your comments how much you understand or what do you want to do, what more examples you want to follow along, and then I'll hopefully try to explain it. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe, please. Let's help this channel. I'm trying to work on this, and your subscription will mean a lot to me. Thank you. See you around in next session. Hello guys, welcome back. Now in previous sessions we talked about something of formatting tags and style tags. Now as discussed, HTML basically is all about formatting your content, structuring your content. Okay, so within that structuring and formatting of your content, there are various different tags that we need to understand as well, that allows us and helps us to properly organize more contents the way we want them. Basically that's the whole idea of it. So in order to understand that, the next topic we're going to talk about is called quotation and citation elements within our HTML. They are again different ways of organizing our content as compared to paragraph and formatting tags. So how do we use them? Let's just talk more about them. So before we begin, again, if you've been enjoying these videos on HTML, don't forget to subscribe, please. It helps a lot and it will ensure that we keep on making these videos. So please do subscribe, like the videos if you find them useful, and don't forget to comment about how far you are going and what are the topics you are interested to learn. So without further ado, let's begin with talking about these quotation and citation elements. Within HTML, we have the block code, the Q, the abbreviation, the address, the site, and BDO elements. All of these 6 different tags are basically used for structuring our content in a very specific manner. So let's just begin with the block code. What is the block code? Well, the block code allows us to create a quotation marks. So wherever we need to have a content that is specifically represented in a quotation manner, well, we need to use the quote tag. So how do we use it? If I click on try it yourself, here is the basic code. So first, here's the output. So this is a standard paragraph. Okay, this is a standard paragraph. It starts from the border of the screen and then the paragraph goes. But when we make a content as a block code, it just gives some indentation and there's a line before or space before it, and then there's some space after it. That's the whole difference between paragraph and a quotation tag. So the way we use it, again, as you understood, we use a block quote, we give it a content whatever we want to do, and we close the block quote tag. However, we use an additional attribute within this code as well. It's called cite. What this basically means that, or what the basic idea behind quotations is, that this is not my thing. I have used this content from some other website, some other reference like Wikipedia or anything. So we need to quote that particular link. So in order to do that, we use the content of block quote, and we provide the site which basically contains the original information or the reference to the original source. Okay, so this becomes our block code. So wherever we need to write the content which is supposed to be indented and little bit highlighted in form of a quotations, we just use a block code. We can use the same thing in paragraph, give double inverted quotations, give a citations as well. Depends on how you are formatting your content. So don't, it's not that if every content has to be a block code if it is referred from some other source. It just completely depends up to you. Okay, similarly then we go inside the Q tag. The Q for short, basically HTML Q for short is quotations. It's a pure quotations tag. It again works similar to the block code. The difference is that if you use a block code, it's basically provides the quotation marks within our paragraph tag. So within our paragraph tag, we write a content that is supposed to be quotation marks. So we can use simply Q tag as well. So if you write the WWF goal is, so this is a paragraph, but this is the line that we are supposed to quoting some other reference, and we want to be within our content. Basically, this is what we need to do. So it's appeared as an inverted quotation marks automatically. So every content that you need in quotation marks, double like these double quotation marks, we just write the Q tag. So the Q tag is basically used to represent these inverted quotations within our content. Okay, as simple as that. So whenever we use a block code, basically it means it's a separate block of code. Okay, it's a separate block of code. It has indentation, it has a space before and after. If you use a Q tag, basically it's just the quotation marks or double quotation marks within our single line. So within our paragraph, it becomes a nested tag. No new line, no space before. Within the same line, the quote appears within double quotations. That's the whole difference with it. Okay, then we have something called abbreviation. Abbreviation means that wherever we want to use abbreviations like WHO, okay, so we use this abbreviation tag, or we should, or recommendedly we should use an abbreviation tag for that, which basically means that now WHO, we provide an attribute called title, and we provide the full form of it. So if I execute this code, you would see that this is our abbreviation. Now if I go here, the abbreviation basically is dotted underlined, indicating that it's a it's basically an abbreviation. And if I hover my cursor over it, the full form of that content is basically displayed as a tooltip. So that's the key difference here. So any content that you want to appear as a, for example, as an underline with a abbreviation with it, we use the abbreviation tag, we use the title, and we use the abbreviation within it, and then close the abbreviation with that. That's simply how it goes. So for example, sometimes we want to use definitions with it. So search engines, for example, I can make this if I want to use this. So I would just say, hey, listen, make this abbreviation, and then close the abbreviation tag. And then within the search engines, again, I will say backslash abbreviation tag. So this basically means that my abbreviation is, or search engine becomes abbreviation. So it doesn't really need to be uh, the pure abbreviation, right? I can have a text abbreviation to it, and then I can say, hey, listen, I need to use something called title as an attribute is equals to, and I can say, for example, www.google.com. This basically means that whenever I execute this code, now search engine has a dotted underline. If I hover my cursor, it double Google it. So we can use a definition, we can use additional information, or we can have that if you're writing an article, it can have an extra meanings to it. Anything can be there which you want, which you basically, in other words, don't want directly to be on the web page, but as an additional tooltip, you can use that abbreviation tag for it. So this is a very cool way of writing our content. So abbreviation ABR tag basically allows us to do that. Moving further, then we have something called address tag, which for me is completely useless. I very rarely use it, but it's there. What address does is that if wherever you are using an address, we use this address tag, and we provide our addresses within the system. Okay, the only difference is that it will appear as italic. That's the whole key with it. You do need to provide BR tags after every line because it won't break the line. So if I remove the BR tag, and if I remove the BR tag here and run the code again, the content appears on the same line. So it's just the same as paragraph tag. The only difference is that now it will show the content in our italicized. So the alternate way of doing that is that I can create a paragraph tag. Okay, and then oops, I can create a paragraph tag. I can have a backslash p here. So this becomes my paragraph. I can easily copy this content paste it here and run it. Okay, so you would not see that this is italic and this is just normal. So that's the whole key difference with it. And we know to resolve this, I can use the I tag or emphasis tag, and I can say \I, and now if I run it, basically it becomes italic. So almost no difference at all. It's the same thing, but it's there. So address tag basically means that it's address. This is similarly useful to search engines, in fact. So this address tag basically will be an information to meta as a metadata for your browsers and for your search engines, letting them know that this is an address content, okay, rather than a standard paragraph content. So if you want your address to be easily searchable and browser oriented, and your documents to be searchable, we basically specify address tag, and the browsers know, oh, here's the address maybe, so they will consider this as an address, or the search engines can easily find it. Otherwise, you can put this in paragraph tag as well, no problem with that. Then site tag, this is again quite useful if you are using blogs and you want to write your content, and when you are citing other resources, other references, other information, then site is something quite useful. So if I hit try it out again, what site basically means that I have an image, I've put an image in this tag. We will talk about images later on, how we insert images in our HTML page, and what exactly these tags and these attributes basically mean. But within our paragraph tag, we basically provide a site. So this basically means the word the screen is italicized and indicating that this has a site information within it. So again, just an italic tag with a site attribute. Just for your reference sake, same thing we can do with our simple italic or emphasis as well. So if I use this here again, and instead of site, if I use, for example, I tag, and then come back here and delete this and remove I, hit execute, you would find that the both are exactly same. But site basically tells our browsers and search engines that you have done the citation, something of that sort. Okay. um, Most commonly I would just use I if I need to use the italic. That's it, basically goes. But it's there, the tag is there, it uses the site. So you can use the site as a third alternative to italic as well. But more technically, it means that it tells the browsers that, hey, this work is being cited by a particular book or some information, and this becomes a part of metadata as well. Okay. Finally, within this quotation tags, we have something called BDO, which is bidirectional override. It basically means that if you want the text to appear from right to left directions. So if I execute it, by default it's all normal, but if you write the text in under BDO, so for example, this line will be written from right to left, so it's written from right to left. Okay, bidirectional text. Now the contents orientation is changed. So technically absolutely no use, right? But this is more useful if you are writing scripts in Arabic or Persian or certain other languages that is not English and that uses right to left. Then this video will actually make more sense and ensure that the text is rendered properly on browsers from right to left direction. So do keep this thing in mind if you are using scripts that do start from right to left, like Arabic, Persian, or any other scripts for that matter, that uses right to left strings. Then this video would be properly rendering your content on your browsers. The text will be more appropriately shown on the browsers. Okay, so this is what we bidirectional content use for. So I hope you understand that. Let's moving on further. Let me talk about content comments as well. So this is something of extreme use. If you are a programmer, comments is your basically next best friend, because it allows you to comment not only the instructions or additional information, but the actual code as well. The way we do it in our HTML is we use this angle bracket, exclamation mark, minus minus, write your comments here, and then we close it with minus minus and angle bracket. Okay, so it has a completely different tag structure. The reason because is that the browsers will completely ignore this. That's why it doesn't follow the tags. Every tag browser read as a valid HTML tag, but this tag is unique in a way that browsers will completely ignore it. Okay, so whenever we need to write comments within our HTML, basically we write something of this sort. Now, if I execute it, see this, only that content within the paragraph appears. Every other tag, every other statement that you write here will basically be ignored completely by the browser. Why this is so useful? So for example, if I'm coming here and I don't want to show all of this and I'm just doing programming, I can very easily use this exclamation minus minus, come back here, and I can say minus minus bracket, so that now if I execute it, see, nothing appears because everything within these document is comment, even your original tags as well. So as a programmer, we write a code and we just sometimes hide a certain code to test other code. This becomes extremely useful in working. Plus writing the comments as well. So I can easily write a comment here which I want as a developer for myself. So this is a comment for my future reference. Okay, so I don't want this to be rendered. I just want to inform this thing. If I run it again, nothing is displayed because this is comment. Because of this comment tag, the browser completely ignores it. It doesn't reads it. It doesn't executes it. So even if you have tags inside this thing, it will also be completely ignored. It will not be read by the browser and browser will not display it. So many times we come across the situations where we are writing a code, we don't like it, we want to change it, we just come say, we say, hey, I don't want this image to be here, but for reference I don't want to delete this thing as well. So I can very easily come here and I can say, okay, just hide the image for now. So the image is completely gone. I said, okay, maybe I don't like this line here as well. So I can come here and I can say, okay, this line also I don't want it. So I can write brackets, exclamation mark, minus minus, start the comment, minus minus bracket. So even this second line is basically now ignored. We only get one line. So all the codes that's beside within this exclamation mark and the comments marks is completely ignored. So this becomes very useful. At the same time, you can write a comment for your system as well, letting it know what exactly you are doing or what's the purpose of a tag is. It's what we call the documenting your code, which is absolutely important in a large corporations, in large software houses, and as a professional developer. It's always recommended that we comment and we leave some comments in there for our code, because when we start building a website, the code becomes in hundreds and thousands of lines, and it doesn't really make sense what's happening at the what point. So leaving a comment basically allows us to understand the purpose, the functionality of each different section, what they are supposed to do. So using these comments basically allows us to hide the tags, it allows us to work with the tags, it is allows us to completely remove or some part, but keeping the code in the system so that later on maybe we want to use it, we can use it. That's the whole gist behind the comment. You can write the comments within the line as well. So if it is this is great text paragraph, but I just can comment this out and just see what's the output of this one. So if I execute this code, you see this is a paragraph. This line, because this is a comment, as I said, browsers will completely ignore it and it's all done, it's all finished, right? So this is comments. This is how we use comments in HTML. We will be using this later on in extensively throughout our coding and other examples as well. Okay, so I hope you understand these two concepts up to this point. Next, we need to discuss colors and CSS. This is where fun begins. So for up till next video, thank you, see you around. Hello guys, welcome back, and in today's session we're going to talk about HTML colors. Okay, so let me just close all these previous session videos, and HTML colors is here. Now, what are colors? Obviously, colors are colors. They basically represent various different RGB values. And within our web pages, within our web designing, these are absolutely important to understand what colors and what color range we have available. So let's talk about colors in this today's session. So now, when we come inside HTML, there are certain pre-built defined colors that we can easily use, such as tomato, orange, red, green, blue, yellow, medium C, light green. These are all different colors. So if you click on try it yourself, you would find that, and we have talked about the heading one. So we have given various different headings here. The style tag is there. We have talked about style tag basically allows us to use CSS property. Now, what colors we are giving here is, for example, tomato. So if I give it the tomato color, this becomes a tomato red. Okay, and then if I give a style as a background and then we specify orange, it becomes orange. Dodger blue will give a Dodger blue, medium green, and so on and so forth. So these are various different colors that we can use by default. All these names are there. If you go further, it says you can set the background color for HTML elements. So any HTML element you can use, you can set it to color. So for example, heading 1 can have the same style background color Dodger blue, so it will have the Dodger blue color. At the same time, we can have a tomato color for our paragraph tag. So if you set up a paragraph tag and you want to issue it its color in terms of tomato red, the background color of that text will be background color. The same way you can set the color of every component in terms of text as well. So if you have a text and you want to change its colors, you use the CSS property called tomato. Color. Okay. So we use a CSS property called color, and then we give it a color name as tomato, so it becomes tomato red. If you give it a CSS property as Dodger blue, this becomes a Dodger blue color. At the same time, we can use something called medium green, so it has a medium green color. So every time we need to change the color of a text, whether it's paragraph or heading or whatever quotation tags you are using, this same applies for across the board, across all tags. We use a style attribute is equals to, we use a CSS property called color, and then medium green. If you want to set the background color of this, yes, you would be using additional property called background color. Okay, that's it. That's how we go about it. Then within CSS, we have something called border. Now again, this is CSS. Using CSS, as I said, we can do tons of stuff. Amongst setting the color and style and background color, there's something called border as well. So we can give border around a component, any component for that matter, whether it's heading, whether it's paragraph, whether it's an image, whether it's any block quotes you are using here, you can give that border around any component. To do that, you just use a border attribute, or within our CSS, we use a border property. We use a style attribute, we give a border property, and this time we have given it 2 pixels solid tomato. So let's just explore this border property a little bit more. This is again part of CSS. Now, if you want to learn CSS, do subscribe this channel, because I will be, after the HTML course, I will be creating an entire playlist of CSS, and we will be diving very deep into CSS as well, and we will be looking into CSS. So if you have already not subscribed, do subscribe and follow my channel for the complete courses on all of the major topics related to web development, from CSS to Bootstrap and JavaScript, coming in next few months, hopefully. So let's begin with the border property for now. Within border property, we basically have certain different attributes, which are basically 2 pixels, meaning the 2 pixel wealth. We can change this to, for example, 5 pixels. So if I do that, it becomes 5 pixels wide. We can change it to, for example, 50 pixels. If you dare to do that, it will have a 50 pixel width. So depending on what you want to do on your web page, certain components have a bigger border, or basically a bigger box around it, indicating that this is important, or whatever design style you want to apply. So this is PX, stands for pixels, how many pixels you want to cover. If you use 1 pixel at the moment minimum, it basically means it just has a 1 pixel of a border, so you can calculate how thick the border you want. Then we have solid, which basically means the type of border you want. Okay, so I can use something called dotted here. Again, this is CSS. So if I use dotted, now you can see we have a dotted border. I can use dashed here as well. For example, DASHED dashed. I believe if I spelled it correctly. Now you see there are small dashes here, and so on and so forth. You can also use a double, if I remember correctly from CSS. You can say, hey, I want a double border. If I click on run, nope, double doesn't work. So I think what was the correct name for this? Dashed, double, and double dash. Many other word options were there. Solid, dotted. I think it was DOUBLE double. If I'm forgetting something, I don't know. Maybe. Let me double check on that. But anyway, so if you use solid, it is already by default solid. It has a dodger blue color, and hello world is displayed within our border area. So we use a style tag to give different border styles and border parameters: color name, the border style, and the width of the border. Again, this is CSS, so don't be confused with that. These are CSS. So to understand what are all these parameters and how we use them, what other values we can give, do follow and learn the CSS for me, and I will be talking about this CSS course using W3 as a reference website again. So moving on further, again here up till now we have been given the direct names which have been predefined for us. But then you can always use the RGB value, or a hexadecimal value, or HSL, hue, saturation, and light value as well. So you, for example, to do that, you can go inside the background color, and then you can call this RGB function. It's RGB stands for red, green, and blue, and then you can give the values of RGB appropriately within this text. Similarly, H1 style tag, you can give what we call a hexadecimal color values, or you can give HSL values, RGBA values. These are different ways how the colors are calculated and generated within each of these systems. Most commonly, we do prefer to use RGB and hexadecimal values. What are RGB and hexadecimal values? If you come inside the RGB tab here, now it gives us that when you use this RGB function within your CSS property, you get red, you get green, you get blue, and each of these basically represent 255 colors of red, 255 colors of green, 255 colors of blue. This is what it says. So approximately 1.6 million colors are possible based on the combination of red, green, and blue. And for a human eye, 1.6 million are more than enough. So we can just easily use any color range within these RGB values. So to find the exact RGB values, there are some examples available on the W3 website schools as well. I will leave a link where you can find a detailed color chart of RGB values, but at the same time you can play around with these value as well. So if you use this red value, so for example, if I set the red to 0, the green is 99, the 71 is blue, this becomes this sea green, I don't know what you call it. If I set it to 0, this becomes a green. Now I can play with various different variations of green color. So you see this, because red is 0, blue is 0, means there is no red, no blue. Now I'm getting different variations of blue from 0 to 255. As soon as I start adding some blue to it, I will get more different tones of green. I can reduce the green to 0. I can play with the tones of value, and I can get RGB very easily here. So W3Schools has this amazing tool that you can use to customize and get exact tone of color that you want, and you can find the RGB values for that particular color range, and then use this color palette within your code as well. So there are certain built-in examples at what you can do. So if you set RGB to 255 and the green 0, blue 0. This means there is no green, no blue, only 255 value of red. Hence, we get what we call pure red color. Okay, as soon as you start mixing green with it, you start to get different shades of red as well as if you include blue, and you get a different values with that. So these are RGB, and you can similarly use different shades of gray by combining these values. So if you set RGB to 60, 60, 60, you get a dark gray. If you set to 100, 100, 100, almost, in other words, the rule of thumb is the same values for all three. So if I come back inside my tool here, if I set it to, for example, 138, and if I come back here and set it to 138 again, if I can manage, and then I can say 138 similarly. So you can see this, it's a roughly a green, blue, gray, dark gray shade color. Okay, so any gray combination, basically you play around with these things. If you need to have a pure colors, just set it to 000, means pure black. Set it to 255, 255, 255 means pure white. Okay, that's the rule of thumb that we follow within these gray shades color. Okay, similarly, hx values, if I come jump into it, these are basically hx or hexadecimal values, as we call them. So these are hexadecimal colors specified with hash RRGGBB. So RR represents red, GG green, and evidently B for blue. So where R is the red, green, and blue, these are what we call a hexadecimal color values. So each hexadecimal color value has a different parameter from 0 to F. Okay, so from 0 to F, there's a specific value for each red, green, and blue. And again, you can achieve the same combination of colors using this wonderful tool by W3Schools, and you can achieve different color values in terms of hexadecimal. So sometimes we use RGB, sometimes we use hexadecimal as well. Most of the time you would find that in CSS and Bootstraps, we tend to go with hexadecimal color values. They are just easy to work with in other similar sense. So we have hexadecimal numbers. Do remember that these are like uh, same color range in terms of red, red, green, green, blue, blue. So if I need to achieve the dark grayish shade, I make sure that all the shade numbers are exactly same, and this will basically generate the same gray shade, and then any combination of these will generate different values with it. So if I have FF, that means that 255 pure of red, and then all other values are 0 and 0, and I can get the generate blue color. Similarly, vice versa, if I set it to FF to blue and set the green to 0, I get pure blue and green in evidently. Okay, so this is how basically we work and play with the colors in HTML. Okay, very simply, we use this chart and find an exact palette. Within W3Schools, I believe there is a very nice color palette as well. I will try to search it and put the color range here. If I think this one is a, if I check here, so you see this, yeah, this is a very nice color palette. So if you scroll down, you will find this HTML reference, HTML colors, and within this HTML colors, you will find this very nice color palettes that you can use with its hexadecimal values. Any color range that you want to use, you can use this number, and then you can further customize it using the hexadecimal tool values. Okay, so this has ton of color ranges that you can use for your reference sake from this point as well, or you can just Google it out and you will find these wonderful color ranges within your system. Okay, so I hope this explains the basic concepts of color, how we use them. If I scroll up, next we're now going to talk about CSS in a little bit more detail with respect to HTML and how we use CSS with HTML. Hi guys, welcome back. Now we're going to talk more about HTML styles in this episode. Now, CSS styles we have talked a little bit briefly, simply as we have been going through various different tags. Let's explore them in more detail because CSS is something that is very closely tied to HTML. And honestly, you cannot design a web page without CSS. Now, this again is not going to be a complete tutorial on CSS. For that, do follow me and do follow my channel. I will be creating more video tutorials on all of these web development topics from CSS JavaScript. So you will be finding that. And by the time I have created it, you might find the link in the down description below. So do watch those courses for the entire playlist on complete CSS tutorials. For now, let's just discuss the basics of CSS, what CSS is, how we use CSS with HTML. So this is going to be very simple basic tutorial based on the content that is W3 have provided within the HTML course. Okay, so within this we talk about CSS, which stands for cascading style sheet, meaning that we use CSS code to design and style our HTML web pages. That's the basic idea behind it. So whenever we want to use CSS, or whenever we want to design the pages, our web pages, we use CSS for that particular purpose. Remember, we have been talking about that HTML is used for structuring the content, not designing it. There's a major difference. HTML tells us how the content should be structured on your web page, but design basically means giving it aesthetics, giving it beautification, giving it more color and pleasing effects, as we see. So for that we use CSS purely. What exactly is CSS? Well, CSS, you can control the color, font size, text spacing between your elements, how elements are positioned, layout, every single thing that you can do on a web page, we basically control using CSS. HTML is in other words, in my definition, I would say this is a linear structural content. Everything comes in a linear manner. Means there's a heading, then there's a paragraph, then the second paragraph, then there is a tooltip, then there's a third emphasis. So everything comes in linearly. But using CSS, we can design non-linear and beautified content. So for example, this menu is appearing here, this menu comes on the top, this menu comes on the top, everything has a green background, there's a logo here on this corner, there's a sign up page on this corner. All this structural design out you see on this page itself is being done through CSS. Okay, from changing the backgrounds to foregrounds to menus, color, everything that we go the assigning the borders to it, everything is done using CSS. Understand? Capish? Wonderful. So learning CSS is absolutely essential, and it basically goes in hand with HTML. So you cannot use CSS individually, you have to use CSS with HTML. CSS is just like an overlay, an extra layer of design code that is applied on HTML. So you fundamentally need HTML at the bottom, and on the top of it, we have CSS, which creates this beautiful aesthetics. So HTML is there. We will be using HTML, but we use CSS to design our HTML. Okay, so this is how we differentiate HTML for structure, CSS for design. Capish? Let's begin. So the way we use it, basically, there are three different ways: inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. These are three different ways of using CSS. We have been using this inline way of CSS in our previous examples. Okay, by inline means that we embed the CSS with HTML tag as an attribute. Okay, we embed the CSS within our HTML tags as an attribute called style. And as you would have been familiar if you've been following me, that we have been using style as an attribute and giving CSS properties and values. Okay, that is basically known as inline CSS. The second way is called internal CSS, okay, in which we write the CSS code inside a style tag, usually going inside the head tag. So the head tag, HTML's head tag, inside that we write the style tag. And the third way is we give external CSS, in which we actually write the CSS code completely in a different file. So we create a new file blank and it contains only CSS code, and then we integrate and link that CSS code with our main HTML file using the link tag. Okay, so let's learn about all these three in detail as we go along further. So first, let me briefly go back to inline CSS. What exactly was? So inline CSS basically is used to apply style inside each HTML element. So inside each tag, we have been using this CSS in previous examples. So heading 1, this is an HTML tag. we provide an attribute called style, and then we write this within the inverted quotations the CSS property and its value. This example is in fact is known as inline CSS. Okay, so inline CSS we write in within our content, and we have been doing that. So whenever we use style as an attribute inside an tag, this is considered as an inline CSS. How we use internal CSS, now this is where the little bit different aspect is applied. Internal CSS, it says that is used to define the style of a single HTML page. What does that mean? It means that when you use an internal CSS, the style is actually applied on all of the content of your web page. That way, you can control the design of your HTML web page completely using internal one line of CSS. Okay, so this internal CSS is defined inside the head tag, and we use a style tag for it. How do we do that? Let's jump into it to understand it more better. So if I execute this code, you will find that, hey, there is some code here, and this code basically allows us to say there's a document type, heading is there, then we have something called head tag. This head tag is basically where our coding starts in terms of internal CSS. So inside the head tag we give this style tag. This is again a tag for HTML. So because this is a tag, it belongs to HTML. So for using HTML, we are defining that, listen, now I'm going to define CSS. Now this is telling my browser that I am using CSS inside a head tag. Previously, we were using it inside the CSS here, but now we plug the CSS out, put it inside the style tag, not the attribute, the tag. So we say that my entire CSS now code goes inside this. The code is now a little bit different as well. What we have done now here is we have used something called an identifier, which identifies that which tag this CSS belongs to. Because previously, remember, we write style as a here. So now we are specifying and we're telling our browser that, hey, this h1 has this style. So it becomes easy. But because now we are not using this internal inline CSS, we are using this style tag. This tells the browser that this is a CSS code. Now the browser will treat this as a CSS code blank. Okay, so this is just simply as that. But inside it now, once we write the tag, which tag it belongs to, that's the information that's missing. So to satisfy that, we use this body as an identifier, which basically is the tag name. So the identifier is actually the tag name in HTML. So h1 is the tag name, p is the tag name. So whatever tag you want to apply the style to, you just write the tag name, curly brackets this time. Instead of inverted quotations, we use the curly brackets, and then we use the same property and value. Done. Then if I want to apply the style on h1, so instead of using a style attribute internally, I use h1 as a tag and h1 as a selector within the CSS style, curly brackets instead of inverted quotations, and I tell then paragraph. And then, so this, what this does means is that now I have used the CSS internally, segregated the code, and this style will be applied. So when we execute it, you see the heading 1 is blue in color. However, there is no style here, but it's blue in color. The paragraph tag is there, it's red in color. And if I want to specify more attributes to it, I say, hell yeah, let's apply more attributes to it. So for example, I can say background dash color, and I can say maybe let's make this yellow. W is missing. So if I run this, BACK spelling mistake. So make sure you don't make any spelling mistakes. If you make spelling mistake, it won't run. Okay. So now what happened? Well, we get a background color. So we specify the styles separately to keep the code simple, to keep the code more readable and understandable. This time, what we've done that we have specified the code separately as a style tag on inside the head tag. This way, our browsers will say, hey, I have a style, no problem. So this is a paragraph, and this paragraph will have this particular style. Capish? Okay. And there's no need to provide any internal CSS here. But here's the key aspect within this thing. What happens if I use a second paragraph? Okay. So if I use a second paragraph, so if I say this, oops, where did that go? Come back here, brother. Don't run away. This is the second paragraph. Okay. Now, as soon as I execute, what should happen? Exactly. This is showing me exactly same style. What happens if I write the third paragraph here? Hello, this is h1. uh, heading 2 backslash h1, and then I write the third paragraph. The third paragraph, okay, gh, and then backslash p. What should happen now? If I run the code, the third paragraph again follows the same style. The heading also follows the same style. Because this time we have provided this heading h1 only once. Every time we now use a heading tag, it will follow the same style. Every time we use a paragraph, we don't need to provide styles separately for each paragraph now. Because we have said, hey, this page uses a style, and when you use a paragraph, this is the style I want for that paragraph. So you specify it once, and every time now you use a paragraph, each of these paragraphs will automatically have this style. That's the key advantage and key takeaway that we need to understand. This means by specifying the style here, I can control the layout of an entire page of all the tags. If I were to do the same thing, I would have to write the style tag with every single attribute and a property for my content. Okay, so in this I have to provide this style tag in this, so I would be repeating code a lot, which is useless, right? I mean, we're just setting certain styles. So instead of repeating the code for every paragraph tag, we gave it as an internal css within the style tag, letting our browsers know that hey, there's a style there, and then telling it that for every paragraph you are supposed to make it red, you make it to yellow, and whatever settings we basically set it. Capiche? It just creates and applies that setting to all of these paragraphs. That's why internal css is so useful. So if you have like 20 paragraphs, you can easily control those style of paragraph by just this one line of code. That's the beauty of css. It allows us to control multiple tags styles using the simple one code. The trick is now what happens if I want this paragraph to be different. That's where we start to use classes and hash. We talk about this in detail when in the CSS course later on. So for now, this is basically what inline internal CSS means. Okay, then let's just talk about something called external CSS. Now, what is exactly an external CSS and how we use external CSS? Within external CSS, we write the entire code in an external file. Here we wrote this style tag and we wrote the CSS code in our head tag. However, if I need to write the CSS externally, this basically means that I don't write here, I delete this entire code, and instead of that, I write a link tag. Okay, so instead of this thing, oops, control Z, come back here, let me click on try it yourself so we can refer that code later on. So instead of writing that code here, now what we have done is that we have just provided a link tag. I will talk about this, but the CSS is actually written in a separate file. Okay, that separate file is completely containing this code. That's the gist of it. Where is that code? Now, again, in this case, our code is within our separate file called style.css. So what we do is we create a new file. We name it style. Again, name can be anything for that matter. The extension needs to be .css. Okay. So for HTML, we talked about it, that every extension has to be .html. For CSS, every extension needs to be .css. So within this, we copy and paste the exact same code without the tag. Remember this tag that we used previously, this belongs to HTML. I talked about it. So this is HTML tag. So instead of this, we just copy this code here, which is CSS code, and we paste it in that file. So body, background color, h1 color, paragraph color, and if I want to update anything here, I write all the codes of paragraph related to this external file, save it as .css. So this becomes one separate file. How do we link it with the main file? So we come to head. Now instead of using the style tag, we use another tag called link. Link tag has multiple different purposes. Basically, in this case, the one we are doing now, let me explain that. In this case, we are saying that, hey, this HTML file is there. There is no style defined within this thing. See, there's no style, but still we see the style attribute. So what we're doing is we're telling the browser that, listen, this HTML file is linked to an external file. That external file is in relation to this is a style sheet. Okay, and the path of that external file is style.css. So href is a hyperreference telling our browser that I'm using this CSS and this CSS file is this one. And this is the path wherever you have saved it. By default, we save it in the same folder where we have saved the HTML file. So now what we do is we save this as a separate file. We save it here. All the CSS code goes inside here, and then we link it with main HTML file. So this is how our external CSS basically works with. This is how we set up our external CSS. So we save the code without the style tag. So because this is CSS, there's no need of writing the style tag. And then we write the whole code is same. Everything else is same. So every time we want to apply a CSS on a particular tag, we give it as a name. Body becomes a selector. H1 becomes a selector. Paragraph for that tag. Bracket start, bracket close. Within the bracket, we write the CSS property and its value. Instead of writing everything within our single HTML, we wrote it separately. Why there's a need for that? Now this becomes, here is the most powerful feature of CSS. The reason for using external CSS is that using this external CSS, now I can control my entire website that could contain hundreds of web pages. What happens if your web page basically contains not one, not two, not three, but hundreds of web pages, or thousands of web pages? Every web page needs to have a heading which has to have a particular style. Every web page has to have a border. Every page needs a sidebar, the right sidebar, the content area, the examples. See this, if you even use the W3Schools website as a reference, every button, every menu is consistent throughout the website. How do we do that? We use external CSS. Within my external CSS, I define that every menu item that you see on a web page needs to have green for active web page, and then this dark black for a hover effect. Then there is the menu items, the sidebar, the left bar, the special code needs to have this gray box around it. Then this tip has to have orange box around it. Colors have to have a background feature. Everything that you see is consistent throughout the website because the style has been defined in our single file. Using this single file, I'm able to control hundreds of pages. So this is the major power of it. So for example, tomorrow, if I say, okay, now I want to change the theme of my website, and let's just from green to, let's just make it this kind of blue. If I'm not using external CSS, internal CSS, if I'm using, that would mean that in every single page, I will have to go and change the color. If it's 100 pages, 100 times I have to open every single page and change the color. If this 1000 pages, 1000. For a consistent page website like even W3Schools, it could have 100,000 pages. Just to change the color of this button here for active from green to blue, I would have to open 100,000 pages and change the color manually. However, and obviously it's a nightmare, you can understand that, right? So however, if I use an external CSS to do that, I just have to go inside my external CSS, change the color from green to blue. That's it. One line, and my entire website color will be changed, because entire website will be linked to that one single CSS file. To link it, we use the link tag. We tell the relation, this is a metadata telling our browser that, hey, listen, this is a style sheet that we are using within our web page, and this is the link that we are using. So this becomes our simple way. So we use inline CSS inside the tag. Internal CSS goes in the head tag with the style tag. External CSS basically goes outside. It's an external file, and we link it with a link tag. So this becomes same throughout every website. Only thing that we need to provide in every web page would be this tag. So every web page will have a link to this style, and then all styling and attribution of the styles and designing of the web page basically goes in this external file. That's the gist of CSS. Okay, so what styles can we do? We have talked about few major things. So if you understand how we use CSS, now we just have to go forward and understand various different properties and how we use those. So we have talked about the color. So in this case, if I take an example, you'd see that, hey, this is a heading, this is a paragraph. Okay, wonderful. So how do we do that? If I come inside body, you would see this is a simple body color. It has heading 1, it has paragraph 1. There's no styling here, but this looks very nice here. How did that happen? Because we have used something called internal CSS. Because this is a one web page, we can use one internal CSS, no problem. Okay, I said okay. So now we say, hey, this heading color needs to be blue, so we color is set. Font family Verdena, so we change the font, and font size needs to be 300% from its original value. So from original value it becomes 300%. If you want to set as a background color, so I can say, hey, background dash col color needs to be, for example, colon, light gray semicolon. If I hit run, it will have a light background color. Paragraph color, we said okay, paragraph, let's just make this also background and the ground. Background color, oh, I still misspelled it. Ground colo color, oops, not cooler, colo color can be, for example, dark brown. Okay, so if I set this to green, okay, dark brown is not read, dark gray should be there. Yeah, dark gray is there. So we now have a dark gray color. If I want to set the body color, again, what I will be doing is within CSS, anywhere I want, it's not necessarily that I write at the top, I can write it at the bottom as well. I can say, hey, listen, the body, for this body color, curly brackets, we gave, and I said for body, let me use again background dash cor color to be LIGHT, light gray or light blue, blue blue. If it's available, let me hit run and it becomes light blue. Okay, so now what happens is that we specify the CSS, we specify the selector that I want to change the color of body, give it a bracket, and then provide the CSS style. So background color, font family, all these attributes are there. Similarly, we can give border. We talked about border a little bit, so I can come here, I can say, listen, how about this paragraph is there, but I want to give it a border as well. So we can say BORDR border, oops, come on, new line, BORDR border, give it a semicolon. I can say it can have, for example, 5 pixels in length, it needs to have solid, and it can be, for example, green in color. I hit run, and now you can see this, we have this border. So what we're doing now is we are providing various different CSS styles. CSS styles are basically different properties which we use to give every design our entire web pages. Okay, so we talked about these things previously as well. So if you've been following along, you should understand that okay, what is border, what is 2 pixels, and everything with that. Similarly, one property we haven't talked about yet, it's going to be detailedly discussed in CSS course. Hopefully in coming days we will come into it, but padding is there. Padding is basically giving certain space to our content. So by default, you can see that this is starting right from the border. What if I want to give that, okay, this text should start after some space. So we come inside this here and I can say, let me give a padding. For example, padding right, and this can be 10 pixels. Okay, now if I run it, there should not be any effect, even the border vanished. Why? Because remember, we have been saying that every CSS property needs to have be ending with a semicolon. Why? Because this is one property, this is second property, this is third property. So semicolon indicates that, hey, this property ended, now new property ended. It's more like a full stop in our normal English statements. We use a full stop to mark the end of a statement. In case of programming, we use semicolon to mark the end of a statement or end of a particular function or end of a particular instruction. So this is just one instruction telling our browser that, hey, background color is supposed to be dark gray, capiche, close it. Then border is supposed to be this, but I forgot to give a semicolon. And so it assumed that this code is still continuing, and it did not make any sense. So HTML and CSS are quite nice and humble languages. They don't give any errors, they don't complain a lot. But if there's any issue, they might not give output as we expect. Okay, so do keep things in mind. So I just gave a semicolon here. Now everything should be okay, and we can have padding, 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 right? Okay, and then we can say padding right 10 pixels. It should be there, right? Oh, okay, this will be left, sorry, not right, left. Yeah, so we can say 10 pixels. Right is actually from this side. Okay, so this is left, this is right, top and bottom. So if I sell 10 pixels, I said I don't see many effect. How about I set it to 50? So if I see 50 pixels, now means that there's a space, padding or gap of 50 pixels, a tab of 50 pixels by default. If I have a big line, I can give a in terms of right as well. So if I come here and I can say this is a big line with some more uh, garbage text, blah 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 blah. Okay, so if I run it, now you see it has multiple line, but now I want to give space from here as well. So this is where we will say, hey, listen, let me write padding dash right and colon and 50 pixels from right as well. So we want this to make sure that there's a 50 pixels from left and 50 pixels from the border as well. If I hit run, and now you can see there's a 50 pixel gap. If you want it to be more, for example 150, it's 150 gap in the pixels here as well, depending on how you are designing your web page. Most commonly you try to follow the same pattern at the both ends, and this is how it should appear. Wonderful. So padding is basically is used to give more space after the component has started. If you want to give space before the component started, see this starting at the border. So if I say, hey, this heading needs to start not here, a little bit offwards. So we use a property called margin. This is one thing. Again, something discussed in detail in CSS course. But we can say, listen, I want to give a margin, and from all around the border, let me give 30 pixel margin for this component. Hit run. So now you see there's a space here, space here, space here. This will mean that there's a margin space occurring from the component as it goes. You can increase this margin to, for example, 50. So now you see there's more space all around the component. The components are being pushed down because we have used margin as a whole word. This means left, right, top, bottom, from all four sides 50 pixels have been given as a space. So if I set it to 10, now notice there will be jump in this alignment like that, because now there's only 10 pixel of space from left, 10 from right, 10 from left or top and bottom and so on. So there's a less space occurring here. Similarly, margin can be allocated in terms of its left and right as well. So I can say, hey, margin left can be 20 pixels. Okay, so 20 px semicolon. So now in paragraph, I said margin left. This means for paragraph, I only want a margin to start from this side. If I hit run, so there's only 10 pixels gap here, and then there's a border, and then padding starts inside the border. So there's a 50 pixel gap inside the border. So these are few different CSS properties. Again, talked much detail in complete CSS course. So do follow along for that. So margin is there basically, which allows us to control that particular margin. So we have used the link to external CSS. We can use the CSS provided by W3Schools as well. So CSS links can be done from your website that you are using. So this is my website. W3Schools has its own style sheet, and I can use that. So in H reference, I can refer to that particular website that, hey, use an online CSS. We typically do this for Bootstrap. So I don't, Bootstrap is like a CSS framework. It's already designed and defined and designated. We don't tamper with it. We just use its predefined styles and components for every single thing. So if you want to use the same style as W3 Schools website, use these border areas and everything, you can just refer to this here and know the styles and apply. Khalas. So this is basically a very quick intro of what CSS allows us to do in terms of external. So we talked about CSS as the style attribute, the style tag, the link tag, the head tag, which allows us to store the style tag, and few of the color properties. Okay, so I hope you understand what CSS is and how we can use CSS to design our web page components. Okay, again, this was just a very quick and brief tutorial, brief session of CSS within our HTML course. For detailed instruction of step by step about CSS, do follow along, and I will be uploading CSS complete course very shortly as well. Okay, thank you for till now.
Hi guys, welcome back to. So now we're going to begin with HTML links. Previously we have been talking about CSS, colors and comments, and so in today's session we're going to talk more about links. Now this is where the HTML's main features start to come in, other than formatting, basically organizing your website. So this is one of the key aspects within HTML, understanding how links work. So without further ado, let's begin with it. So now links are basically found almost in every single page. These are considered as the hyperlinks, meaning that the text on which when you click on it, it takes you to a different page or loads something. In other words, these are what we sometimes refer to as action text as well.
means when you perform, when you click on this link, or when you click on these text, they perform certain actions. So if I come here, see this Java, it's written here, but they are links. When I click on it, it will load a new page. If I click on previous, this is a text, it will behave like a button, but technically it's a link. And when I click on it, it will take me to the previous page. Similarly, next, if I click on it, so there becomes an action event. So every time we have a content or of text on which when we want user to click, and in response to that, certain actions happens, which basically is loading a new page. Basically, we need to use links. So links, you can click on any link to jump to another document. That's the whole gist of it. When you move the mouse over a link, the mouse arrow will turn into a little hand. That's the key thing to identify, to know that when we are using links. So every time we go over a link, it will basically turn into a little hand. Every time you are over a normal mouse, normal content, it's basically a simple text. So every time you over a particular link, that's how we identify that our mouse cursor icon has changed. Okay, so do keep this thing in mind. So now let's come to the syntax of HTML. How does HTML link work or does look like? So basically, in order to use the HTML links, we use this A tag. We use this A tag, which sometimes is known as the anchor tag. This anchor tag allows us to create the link within HTML documents. So every time you want to create a text, or you want to have a text that should, when user clicks on it, jumps to a new page or loads a new page, basically you need to put this anchor tag there. Okay, the syntax of this anchor tag is quite simple. You just need to understand two main things. First, we use a tag, then it has an h reference. This h reference is basically the URL. So h reference stands for hyper reference, means whenever we click on the text between these two anchor tags, that this text will basically redirect us to this new URL. Okay, so the two main things within anchor tag are that first we use anchor tag, second we use h reference, and then within these two anchor tags we provide the text on which the user needs to click, and when they click on this text, it will take us to this URL. Do keep in mind, instead of this text, I can use a graphics or image as well. So we can have an image that allows us to use any, that can be used as any link as well. So the most important attribute of anchor tag is h reference. So we need to understand with that. The link text is the part of the visible to the user. So this, whatever is used here, is basically visible to the user. So this is where whatever we write. So this can be an image, this can be a text as well. So clicking this link text will send the reader to this specific URL address. So whatever address we provide here, when user clicks on this text, it will take it here. Let's see an example of this in live running. So when we load the code, basically what happens is that we see a paragraph, we see an anchor tag, and then we see something called visits W3Schools website. Now, if I hover my cursor over this, you can see this, the link appears. There's an underline with it. It has a different color as compared to a normal text. This all are by default done by HTML and the browser. That's the first major aspect that you need to understand. Whenever we use anchor tag, three main things happen with it. First, the color changes. Second, there's an underline automatically over it. Third, the cursor changes to the pointer. These three things automatically happen and we're not involved anything with it. And obviously we can control that, we can change that, we can modify that through CSS as well, and which we will be doing. That's how these links are created, when they just change the behavior of it, but they keep the functionality inside it. The functionality is that when user clicks on this link, it will load up a new page. How this new page loaded is because we use an anchor tag behind this text, and within the anchor tag we provide h reference, which is a hyperlink reference to this particular URL. So you can have a URL here, or you can give a particular address of a web page itself as well, or a file that you want to load, or a PDF file that you want to show, or an image that you want to show, XYZ. Any file that you want to use, any resource you want to use, basically you can put it here. As long as it's the text, user clicks on it, it's visible some way, basically you can use that. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. The second thing is that by default links will appear as follows in the browsers. So an unvisited link is basically underlined and blue, a visited link is underlined and purple, and an active link is underlined and red. So these are three things that we need to keep in mind as well. So once we click on a particular link, okay, so if if I rerun this page, so it's appearing as purple underlined because we have already visited this link. But if once it's hovered over there, you can see it's a light red. If I don't know whether you can see it here, it becomes a red color that indicates that the link is currently active, and so on and so forth. So three things, again, do keep this thing in mind. Then within our HTML links, we add additional attributes like where this link should open. At many times you see that if you click on the link, actually it doesn't load on the same page, it opens a new tab. and that's because we have told it that whenever user clicks on this particular page, on this link, don't open this page on the same tab. In fact, open it in a new tab or a new window, xyz. So to do that, we basically provide additional attribute of target. Okay, this target basically is allows us to open a page in a different tab or a window or within a self with that. So by default, this link page will display the current browser's window. So by default, if you don't specify any uh, attribute of target, this will mean that open the page in my same window. That is why when we click on this link, it will open the page on the same window, because by default it uses the target as blank. Okay, so this basically, oh sorry, as self. Okay, so by default it will open the page in the self window. However, we can specify it as blank. By blank means open the document in a new window. By default, the self is selected as a property value, which means open the document in the same window as which has been clicked on. So let's see a few examples of this before we go further in that. Okay, so if you run the code here and you want to explore the examples, you will see that there's a link here, W3Schools, and target is blank. By this we means that every time we click on this, you will find that it opens a new tab and the window browser is opened here. Okay, because we have set the target attribute is equals to underscore blank. Now these values are pre-defined, so you have to use the same values. If you use anything else, mess it up, spelling change, by default it will become self. So if by default we use what we call self, so if I write self here, hit run this code, and then I click on it, see this, the web page opens in the same window. That's because it's self. But if I use this as blank and run the code, now if I click on it, it will open a new tab and open that particular website or web page on a new tab. Okay, that's how basically this works. Similarly, we have a different aspect on it. So mostly we use self and blank on it. Parent basically means that open the document in the parent frame, or top basically means that open the document in the full body of the window. So within the window, open it in full body. Further on, we basically need to understand how we use these URLs. Now, when we provide the path to this H reference, there are two basic ways of doing and using these paths, and this is a constant throughout programming. So if you are using programming first time, this is quite essential to understand, and we will be using this throughout the programming. No matter what language we use, we basically talk about something called absolute path or relative path. Because we are using URLs in HTML, we have been talking about something called absolute URLs or relative URLs, basically meaning same thing. So this basically means that every time you're referring to an external file, what path mode you are using. So in this case, absolute path basically means that we provide complete path to a particular location. Okay, and relative path means we just provide the relative file name, assuming this file name exists within the same folder as my current directory is. Okay, so if I have my file that is saved in exactly the same folder where my original file is saved, then I no need to provide the complete path. I just provide the current file name. So let me give you one more example of this. So for example, if I write another link, a tag, and this is absolute path 2, and then I close the a tag reference. Okay, so currently if I run this, see this, it's not behaving as a link, even though we have used the link here. Do keep this thing in mind. Sometimes you ask this in the exam questions and interview questions as well. If I use just an a tag, because it is an anchored, but this, it does not behave like an anchor because we have not specified the hyper reference path exactly. So we do need to keep in mind as well that, hey, whenever I try to use this, I need to provide what we call the path with. Okay, so if I come here now, if I use h reference is equals to path, and I say, hey, listen, go to C drive, there's folder called my documents. Within my documents, I have a folder called W3Schools. Within W3Schools, I have a folder called HTML tutorials, and then within HTML tutorials, I have links folder. Within links folder, I have uh, ex, example.html file. Now, what does this basically mean? This is another example of absolute path. Okay, so if I run this code, now see this behave like a link because we have provided an H reference. If I click on it, this will load up this complete path for me. This is an example of absolute path where an entire folder link has been provided from C drive to my drive. Okay, if I'm going to do the same thing in terms of relative path, okay, so what I will be doing is I will be using absolute anchor tag again, and I will say, hey, this is a relative path, and then backslash anchor tag, Then come inside the anchor tag, we provide the h-reference is equals to, oops, h-reference is equals to in the inverted quotations, and I will say, listen, example.html. That's it. This time we don't need to write this entire path name, because this is what we say relative path is. In the relative path, we just provide the file name. But how does it know that where the file name is? Here's the key thing. For a relative path, you have to ensure that the file that you want to access is in the same folder as your current file. So if this is my HTML document and this is saved in something called, for example, this thing, oops, let me come here, and let's just copy this thing. Okay, so let's just say this is my file name, and I can go write a comment here, file name path or folder path. Okay, so this is where my project folder is, project folder. So I have my project folder here and I've saved it in this particular path. Okay, I said no problem, wonderful, perfect. So that basically means that this file that I'm currently working on, this HTML file, for example, link one.html, this is the link one file name as. Okay, so I've saved it in the same folder as link folder. Then because I'm going to use another file called example.html that is going to load when I click on this file, I save this file also in the exactly same folder. That way I will make sure that both these files, link1 and example.html, are in same folder. If I have put this thing in the same folder, then I don't need to do anything else. All I need to do is just write the file name. That basically means that I'm clicking on this link with it. Okay, so that's whole idea behind absolute and relative path. Okay, similarly we can go and use the links within our images as well. So this path link works with an image as well, and this image can behave as a link as well. So if I click on this code here, this is basically what it means. So for example, we have an image of anything. Okay, you can create this HTML page, paragraph, we have an anchor tag here, and then within anchor tag, instead of writing the text, I am writing the link tag here. Okay, so this is how basically it's supposed to work. So if I just move it here to see this in better way. So now you have an anchor tag, and this is how it is. So within anchor tag, instead of writing the text which we did previously, we gave an image tag. Don't worry, we will be discussing images a little bit later in this sections, the next classes. So we will talk more about how images are supposed to be working. But basically is that I can set an image to be my anchor tag as well by simply using an image tag, providing the path. Again, these all informations are currently irrelevant, so we can easily remove these as well, and we can say, hey, I have an image and source is there. So if I run it, basically I have my image as a link. So whenever I click on it, it will take me to this default ASP page, which will basically mean that I have a default ASP page of its web W3Schools. Okay, so this is how basically our links work. We provide a text, we use anchor tags to define a link between these pages. Okay, so later on I will be using more examples to do that. Now, link to an email. How do we set link to email? Again, same way, exactly. The only thing is that within our course now, within our path, we provide something called mail to. So we just use the same anchor tag, h reference. Instead of providing the path of a file, when we want to send an email, or when we want to have a button where when we click on this, it sends us an email. Okay, see this, it says now you want to send an email, open it into your mail client. That's it. Or how did it knew that we are trying to send an email, not load a page based on the h reference path? So here we have provided it a specific keyword called mail to. By using this mail to keyword, we are telling the browser that this is not a file, but I want this to be an email. Use this email address here. So every time you see this mail to link, email me, contact me link throughout your websites, basically we use the anchor tag h reference and we provide this mail to colon the name of the email address. That's how it works. Moving further, similarly, there's other variations of links called button as a link. So how do we set this button as a link? So if you can see this, this is a button. How do I change this button to be a link? In order to do that, we don't use anchor tag. Now this is a little bit different. We will be using these with JavaScript more appropriately. But what we do is we create a button. This is another HTML tag. Okay, so this button will allow me to have a button as a real button, and when I click on this button, it changes the path. But instead of, because this is not an anchor tag, we do not use what we call h reference. Instead, we're providing something called onClick. OnClick is in fact a JavaScript's event. It's an attribute associated with HTML, but it is used with JavaScript. So every time somebody clicks on your web page, this on click event is triggered, and based on that we provide the JavaScript code that when user clicks on this button, what I am supposed to do. In this case, it's like document dot location, so change the location of the current document to this default page. So when user clicks on this button, if I run this code again, so when user clicks on this button, what I'm supposed to do is every time I click on this one, change the location of my current web page to this new web page. To do that, I've used the JavaScript using the document, which refers to my current document. Dot location means the URL. So the current URL of the document, change it to this new default .asp page, which will load up this new default ASP page. So this is how we can use button as a links as well. But technically, this is like an on-click event, not even behaving like a link, but it basically allows us to load a different page, so we can use it that way. Okay. Now, there's one other thing that we associate, one other attribute that we associate with links. It's called titles. So the title attribute specifies extra information about an element. The information is most often shown as a tooltip when the mouse moves over that element. Let me show you what exactly we mean. However, we have been using this title in previous examples as well. So wherever we need the tooltip, we use this title. So if I have a link and I want to hover my cursor over it and I see this tooltip at the bottom, this is basically what title attribute does. Okay, and it doesn't only depend on your anchor tag. You can use this title on any single thing. So even on your heading, I can come inside the heading tag and I can specify title is equals to bracket, and I can say hello h1. And if I run this code, okay, so if I come here, you will see hello h1. So this title is an attribute associated with HTML. You can use it anywhere. Similarly, you can put it in your anchor tags as well if you want to have that URL. So more about absolute and URLs and relative URLs. So it says that here's an example. We can provide an exact full path of a page. Previously it was just W3Schools, but if you copy in an entire URL, you can also use that as an absolute URL for that particular page. But if you are using or hosting this thing online, it's always recommended that we use an absolute URL for your relative URL for your project. That way you are not dependent on the predefined domain. So relative URLs are extremely important, and we prefer to use a relative URL. This means every time you're creating a project, we just use this relative URL as a basis, and we regardless of what prefix of the location of the server is, it will always be within my same folder. All files are saved within same folder, allows me to work very easily. Okay, so these are examples with it. So in this particular chapter, we talked about anchor tag, we talked about hrefs, we said target allows us to open pages and new links. Hrefs makes the actual link. So actually, if you just use an a tag, this does not create the link. Okay, it's just to define a link, but it does not create the link. You need to use a anchor tag with hrefs. The combination of these two will actually create the link. And whenever we create a link, do may remember that by default the text becomes blue. It is underlined, the cursor changes, and once you hover it, the cursor becomes the anchored the text color also becomes red for an active link, and then once it's been clicked, it becomes purple, just to indicate that this link is active and has already been clicked with it. We said that you can make images as a link as well. You can use on click button to make a link as well. You can use mail to effect as a attribute within the value to create a mail to link as well. So I hope these concepts clear. All of these, do try these examples out and let me know if anything else is needed. Okay, so up till this point, okay, next we're going to talk more about HTML images in the next session. See you then.
Hello guys, welcome back. So previously we've been talking about HTML links, CSS and other attributes of HTML. Let's move on further. In this session, we're going to talk about images. How do we insert images in our web page? Now, that's obviously one of the most interesting aspect of HTML. It allows us to control how we insert and use images within our web pages. And it's obviously one of the most fundamentally important thing. And it's very easy to do. As always, we need a tag, okay? And the tag is basically IMG. So you need to use IMG tag to insert an image or any image in your at any point in your web page. The way it works is that you use an IMG tag, then you need to provide the source attribute. Okay, the source attribute basically contains the path of your file that you want to display. That's it. That's all it needs. Okay, and if I click on try it yourself, here's our image. We have a heading that contains the text and then img source picture truly.jpg. Now assumingly this picture resides within the same folder as my current file has been saved. So this is an HTML file. It has been saved in a particular folder. you use the same folder and say you save the image at this exactly same location. Then just write the image name, okay, with extension. Okay, so make sure you do understand the extensions of your files. If there are JPG, PNG, GIF, or web WP, WBBG, okay, web page as we call it. So that's all we basically need to do. Certain additional metadata we can provide if you want to control the aspects of this image, such as alternative text, which is truly, so that basically means that if somehow image is not loaded or cannot be found, a text will be displayed on that particular image. This alternative text is also used by search engines to find what this image is about. So whenever we do image search, basically this alternative text allows us to document that what is this image type, and search engines technically look for this thing here to understand what exactly we want. Okay, so it's always important to write a description, or description means in 1 or 2 words, 3 words, define what your image is about so the search engines can easily find it. Then obviously self-explanatory width and height of your image in terms of pixels. So this is like 500 pixels and this is 33 pixels in terms of its height and width. Okay, so this is how we insert an image. The other key important aspect of this image tag is that it has no closing tag. This is one of those rare tags within HTML, like BR, like HR. Image also has no closing tag. It is just there because it's just going to display the image, and the image is coming from this src path. Okay, so it does not require or does not need, and it does not have an image closing tag. So do keep this thing in mind. So we basically provide an alternative text, which is, in other words, if this is an image, I don't know what this image is about, but providing this alternative text allows me to understand how there's a girl in a jacket. So if I click on try it yourself, you're looking at the image, I can assume that okay, this is here. So if somebody searching online, basically Google search engines or other search engines will use this alternative text to find out information about that particular image. So how image syntax works, again, it uses this image tag. Basically it's an empty, it contains attributes only. There is no closing tag for this image. That's all that you need to understand. Okay, then within this image, basically two basic attributes that we specify are source, which are the source of your URL, and then the alternate is basically the description about your image. Now again, this is not an important, this is not mandatory, in other words, but it's recommended that you use this alternative text every time you want. Okay, so this src attribute requires the path of your image. Okay, by the path means that wherever you have saved your image, you provide that path to this image. So src path name, okay, and then alternative text. So alternative text attribute, again, if we talk about this now, it requires attributes provide an alternative text for an image, basically meaning that if your image cannot be loaded for any reason, the text will be displayed. So that's one use of this alternative text. So if path name is corrupt or something, it will show me this alternative text. Second, it's also used by search engines. So this is one thing that we use. So every time you need to insert an image, that's all it needs to take. So we write an image tag. Wherever in my text I want to insert an image, simply write an image tag, src, image name, within inverted quotations. That's all it takes. Alternative text describing the image. We can use the style attribute. Now we have talked about style in terms of CSS. Again, this is inline CSS. Means that within inline I have provided the CSS, and using CSS I can control the width and height of this image. Remember, there is a width and height attribute of HTML as well. You can use that as well. So it basically becomes exactly same. Depends on what you want to do. In the long run, we always recommend, hey, let's use this style. CSS allows us to control more aspects of an image. So we prefer, if you're using CSS, then preferably you would find that you would be controlling the size of an image using CSS alone. Okay, so similarly, if I move the width and height in terms of attributes, we can use width height attributes as well. So you have a width attribute, we have a height attribute, or you can do the same using the CSS style as well. Okay, this is what it's all talking about. So you can use the width of an image, height of an image in terms of pixels, we define it, or we can use the CSS as well. Okay, and we use this as simply as it goes. Then images in another folder. Now this is again important thing. Usually what happens when you build a large website, there are hundreds of images, so you don't want to keep all images in one single folder where your HTML files are. So it's always recommended to create and duplicate another folder structure and put the files in these images folder. So we segregate our folder names. Okay, so the way it works is that, for example, within your project folder where you have saved your HTML, okay, if I click on this image, if you have saved your image for images, if you have saved your web page in a folder, And inside that folder you create another folder called images, and then put all your images related to your project within that folder. So how do we access it? We use \images \html.gif. So this basically means that I have a folder. Within my folder, I have created another folder called images, and within that, I have my image file. So this is what we give in terms of path name. Okay, so you can save your images in a separate folder. Make sure you give a correct path. If you want to use an image on a server, you can do that as well. Okay, so for example, if you come here, and you would see that this time we are using an image that's located on a server, and for that we need to provide an absolute path of that file which is on a server. So you can use images from iStock or PixArt or any other website that has a URL publicly shareable. You can use that image URL directly, and it will fetch the image from that particular server location. Okay, so sometimes we do that. There are many websites that provide images that you can directly use without even downloading, and you can use them from the server directly. Just remember that you need to provide an absolute path for that particular image. You can use animated GIFs as well. Again, animations is quite important and is quite commonly used on websites, meaning that any GIF images that have certain animation in it, all you need to do is just use the GIF image. It's the same code. So image tag src, you just provide the GIF. If the GIF has animation, it will automatically be rendered as an animation on our browser. As simple as that. Okay, so you can see this inserting image is absolutely easy peasy. It's very simple and very easy task. As long as you use the image tag, you don't have to worry about any other thing within your thing. You can make your image as a hyperlink as well. We have talked about this in last session in links as well. So for example, if I have an image, I can make this as a link. So when I click on it, it loads a particular website. How do we do that? We use an anchor tag. We provide hrefs default ASP or the name of the file that we want to load. Then we come here and we provide image tag. So within image tag, we provide src, file name, alternative text, style if you want to do that. Now, because the image tag has been placed between the anchor tags from starting to closing times, this will now be considered as a link. So the image becomes a hyperlink. So instead of text, we can use an image or icon or GIF or button or anything you want as a link itself. It's a cool way of designing your web pages. Okay, and then so on and so forth. So this basically allows us to understand what images are and how we use images. So every time you need an image, just use an image tag. The five formats that are basically supported by image are apng, gif, icon, jpg, png, svg. You can use all of these image files. Okay, so I hope you understand how we use that. It's very simple and very easy to use images, and we can set these images quite conventionally within our websites. Okay, so thank you, and hopefully see you in next session now. Hello, welcome back. So now in next session, we're going to talk about how do we set about HTML background images. Now, previously we talked about images and how we can use the image tag within our HTML to set up the image. This time we're going to say how we set background images, meaning that we set an image as a background of your web page. Okay, so the background image can be specified for almost any HTML element. The key thing is to remember that. So any HTML element can have a background tag. So you can have a paragraph that has a background image, just like a background color. Similarly, you can have a heading or div tags or any tags that you use within your HTML can have a background image. How do we set that up? Basically, we use CSS. Primarily, we use CSS to do that. Okay, so in this case, if I click on the try it yourself code, let me close all the previous sessions. Okay, so now you can see this that we have a text here available. This is a paragraph text and it has a background image. How it has been set up is that we use a heading. We have a paragraph. So these are two as a normal text, nothing special about them. However, this paragraph has an attribute called style, again CSS inline style. So we are using an inline CSS to tell our paragraph and tell our browsers that this paragraph has a specific background image. So previously, we used an attribute CSS property called background color. Okay, if you use background color, this will set a background color of your attribute. So for example, if you come on this one, in this paragraph, I can come and I can say, hey, listen, let's have a style. And then let's say is equals to, we can use background color. Okay, and then we can say light blue. Okay, so if I set this as a light blue color, hit run, you see this as a background color light blue. Similarly, there's a property called background image. What this will basically mean that we can set an image as a background, any image that for that matter. The way it works is because image needs a URL src, so it uses a function called URL. This is a CSS function that takes a single argument called your file name. Simple as that. So in when we set an image, mm, just an image, we use src as an input. However, when you want to set a background as an image, then you use the background image attribute within your CSS style, and then you use a URL function and then provide the path to it. So this is the basic way of doing it. So any tag can have this. So instead of this paragraph background, I can set it background image, and then instead of specifying the color name, I will be using the URL. That's how basically so. So that way, any style can be done, any paragraph or any tag can have a background image. We can use an inline CSS, or in this case, we are using an internal CSS. How do we know it's an internal CSS? Because we have used a style tag and we specified a paragraph as a selector, bracket start, bracket close, and then we have specified the background image as a CSS property. So this is also liable. This would basically mean that now every single tag within your CSS will have this background. So if I create another paragraph here, okay, so if we create a paragraph 2 and then we say, hey, this is paragraph 2, and then we go here and this is paragraph, and if we run it, this paragraph will also have the same background image as well. So every paragraph will now have the exactly same paragraph image. Okay, that's the wonderful thing about it. So we can set background image on a body as well. Now this is very commonly done. Mostly websites nowadays tend to have a very nice, subtle, very light background for your images, for your body. That way this image appears on an entire web page as a background image. This can be an image or a small gradient effect or shading effect or anything of that sort. How do we do that? Simply we specify CSS body bracket start bracket close, body background image, and then image name. What this will basically do, it will set this body as a CSS style and the image will be set on a body tag. So with this body tag has no CSS associated with it. You can use an inline CSS or internal CSS. The function is the same. So if you use an internal CSS, this now basically means that body bracket start bracket close has the image associated with it. Okay, so this is how we can set background image. Only thing to remember is that we can set a background image using CSS. You can set it on any tag that you want. Okay, as long as you understand how these tags are working, so you can use this background. There is a feature called that if your image is very small, you can use what we call a repeat feature. So by default, if your image is small, the smaller than the element will repeat itself horizontally and vertically until it reaches the end of the element. So if your image is small, it will automatically repeat itself. To avoid background images from repeating itself, the background repeat property to no repeat. Again, this means that now we use another property within CSS that will allow us to ensure that the background does not repeat itself. If I remove this, Control X, hit run, by default it's set to repeat. That means every time you use an image and if it's a smaller image, it will automatically repeat. This is sometimes very useful. As I said, sometimes we use a very small image that has a repeating aspect to it, and we set that as a background. Okay, but sometimes we don't want that repeat feature to happen. So what we do is we use another property. Now remember, this is a different property within CSS, semicolon, it ends. This is another property, means we control the behavior. He said, hey, if there's a background dash repeat, no matter whether this image has been set or not, it will use it as a no repeat feature. That means that background do not repeat the feature and use it here. So this is how we can control how we want our background to appear. Okay, so I hope you understand that. Do try it to go through it and then let me know what we need to do. Next, we're going to talk more about how we use a favicon. Hello guys, welcome to the channel and in this HTML 101 coding course. In this course, we have been talking about HTML and we have talked about various different things about HTML basically. Now we're going to talk more about how we do favicon. In previous session, we did talk about HTML images, links and everything. In images, we saw that how we set an image. Similar to that, today we're going to talk about something called favicon. Now basically favicon is a small icon that you see on the top of the tab. Okay, so if this is my tab, you see this W3 icon, this is basically what we refer to as favicon. How do we set that? A small trick to do that. Let's learn in this session how we can do that. So favicon is basically this small image displayed next to the title bar in your each browser. So every browser you open basically has this favicon. Okay, so favicon is usually a small image, so it should be a simple image with a high contrast value.
That's the best ideal thing that we need to understand. So for example, if you look at these images here, these are simple images with a high contrast values, so they can easily be recognized. That's exactly what we mean. So when we see this 5 icons at here, W3, this is basically a high contrast value with black and white, the green and to a transparent background with a clear indication of what an image or what this website basically represents. Okay, how do we set this fav icon? Basically, we add a link element our HTML page, and after the title element be like this. So for example, we say that we have a simple HTML document. You can write a document type HTML head. Inside the head, we have a title which defines our page. So we define our what we call link tag. Okay, so now we have used link tag previously in CSS to link external CSS file with our HTML. Here we are again using a different way of using the same link tag. Okay, so this is the same link tag but for a different purpose. In other words, this time we are using this in terms of relation. Now with the CSS we used as a style sheet, but because this is going to be an icon, we're going to set it as an icon. Type image X icon. This is again a metadata. This is telling our browser that, hey, this link tag is going to be an icon. The type of this icon is going to be image X dash icon. This is the predefined metadata keyword that we need to tell about this icon. And then H reference is going to be the path of the file. The file again has to be .ico. So whenever we need to set an icon, have icon on for our web pages, any web page for that matter, and for every web page usually we set this fav icon so that every web page has this icon in a consistent manner. We need to set this single line. Now again, three things are there. The first key thing that we need to use is the the link tag. Okay, so the link tag. So first thing we do is we set the link tag. So in order to set the fav icon, you have to understand that you need to use a link tag in your head after the title so that this link can be used to create this link for the fav icon. Within the link tag, we have three main things: relation, which is set to icon; type, which is set to image dash backslash x icon; and then finally h reference. H reference contains the path to your image. Now, one other thing that you note that the extension of this image is .ico. Previously in images chapter, we did use images and we told you that you can use JPG, you can use PNG, you can use GIF as well, or any other web supported image file format. However, in this case, we are using a different format called icon, which is a specific format designated for using an icon. Again, if you have a simple image, you can easily convert it into icon as well, into this icon extension. So this is all. So every time you need to use a code for this image, you basically use this code. There are various different favicon supported browsers. So for example, Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Safari, all will support this format as well as the specific image format. So nowadays with the latest HTML5, your favicon file format can be PNG, can be GIF, can be JPG, can be SVG, but most of the time you would find that they always prefer to use icon. That's it. So we use a link tag to use this, and that's all you need to do. Every time you come here, relation, make sure you specify it as an icon, type image slash x icon, and you will have your icon file here. Make sure you save your image icon within the relative path of your folder so you can easily access it within that. By relative path means where your original HTML file is saved. Within the same folder, create a folder called images. We talked about this in images as well in previous session. If you haven't followed it, do watch my previous lecture on this, and hopefully you will be understanding it. And then save your image. Okay, hopefully you understand it. See you in next session. Hi guys, welcome back. So today in this session of HTML Coding 101, we're going to talk about HTML's title tag. Now, title is something we have talked about previously as well, but today very quickly, very briefly, let's just explore a little bit more in depth about what this title is and what title has been doing. Now, if you have been following me, I've been discussing about all this entire HTML topics using W3Schools as website, as a reference website. Again, as a short disclaimer, I'm not being paid and this is not a sponsored or official website, official video of this particular website. I'm just using it as a enthusiastic, as a coding. I love this website and I've been using it for a long time. So I thought, okay, let's just use this. So in this now almost I think 13th session, we're going to talk more about titles using this website. Okay, so let's begin. No, title are basically, as we have already discussed several times, I believe, slightly, are name of your page. So whatever is the name of your page that you want to be displayed on the title bar, basically we use this under title tag. So title literally basically means the title of your web page. It's like the name of your web page that will be displayed on your tab bar. So everything that you write inside this title tag basically gets displayed onto the title page of your tab bar. Okay, this again is also considered as a metadata. It tells the system, the browsers, that what is the page about. It is a home page, it is a PHP page, it's a HTML page, whatever content basically you're using. Your website can have so many things. So titles help us to identify exactly what we are viewing within our browser, what page we are viewing within our browser. It's a quite nifty and quite useful thing that we do. Every web pages in the world tend to use their titles very effectively. This can also be used for metadata, for searching informations as well. So whenever we use title, the information that we see on our tabs, basically this is where the title goes. Okay, so whatever you want to name your page, for example, if it's HTML tutorial, that's what we want. When I'm in CSS, it should display me CSS tutorials. If I'm in JavaScript, it will tell me JavaScript. That's what title does for us. So title defines title in your browser's toolbar. It also provides a title for the page when it is added to the favorites. So next major key thing is that when you add a page to your favorites, this title basically gets this saved as your page name. So your page name within your favorites will be actually your title page. So that's why we want to make sure that the title page is as descriptive and as simple as possible, so that when people save it within their favorites, they can very easily search this page as well. So it displays a title for the page in the search engine results as well. As I just said, this title page is again also used by this title tag and title page information is again used by your browsers, your search engines as well, to search about your particular page from your history as well. One other thing I think is mentioned here is that once you save this page, your browsing history, the pages you visit actually are saved based on your page title as well. So browsers also save it as a history. They also use, if you search your history, the pages you have visited, they again use the page titles for that search purpose as well as search engines and your favorites toolbar as well. So title has quite multiple uses. That's why we tend to use it. Typically, we always prefer to use title within the head tag. Okay, so do keep a mind of it, because technically, as we discussed previously in HTML, everything that goes for the browser goes inside the head tag. Everything that is to be displayed to the user within this web page bound is given written inside the body tag. So technically, title is actually information to the browser, telling it's the name of the page, and then the browser uses it for favorites, for search history, for showing it on the tab, and then allowing metadata for search engines as well. So this actual information is for the browser. That's why we always prefer to use it inside the head tag. Okay, so that's all about title for now, and I hope you understand it. In the next session, we're going to talk more about the wonderful tables in HTML. See you in next session. Hello guys, welcome to the day 14th of HTML Coding 101. In today's session, we're going to talk about tables. Now, as you know, if you have been following me, we have been going through HTML through W3Schools website. And in this course today, we're going to talk more about tables and how we use tables in HTML. Okay, before we go further, again, if you have been enjoying these sessions, please do subscribe, as I will be creating complete courses on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all other topics within using this W3Schools website. So if you want to learn web development and Python and other courses, don't forget to subscribe. We will be talking about all of these topics in coming days. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin HTML tables. Now, HTML tables allows us web developers to basically organize the data in a rows and column form. Okay, so for example, this is a table structure. So if you have used tables in Excel or previously, this is basically the similar thing in rows and column. Every time you represent the data in a rows and column form, we have something called tables. So these rows and column form indicate that this is one row, and this is one row, and this is one row, and then we have tables, columns. Okay, how do we create this structure using HTML tags? To do that, basically we use certain code structure. This time the code becomes a little bit complex and nested. Let me explain and break it down to you how tables work, and then hopefully everything becomes easy. First, in order to create a table in HTML, obviously we need a table tag. So we write the first table tag as it is. Okay, this will create the simple table, but this will not put anything in our components. Then, in order to create each individual row, we need to define a row tag called TR, which stands for table row. Okay, so each of this table row, table row indicates the individual components or each individual rows within our table. Okay, third that we do is then table heading. Okay, or table heading in this case is the company, contact country, which is basically these table headings. So the first row is a table heading. Okay, so in this case, table row, the first row basically contains a tag called th, which stands for table heading, indicating the heading of our table. This is again not compulsory, we can omit it. We can, if you just want rows, you can use something called td, which is table data. Table data indicates the individual data elements within each row. So the way the hierarchy works is that first you create a table, then inside the table you create rows, row 1, row 2, row 3. TR indicates each row. So this row, TR, 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 each row is basically a TR tag. Then inside each table TR tag, we have the components, the cells as we call them. These cells represents table data. So this is table data, this is table data, this is table data. But because the first row usually contains the heading, we have something called TH that represents the headings. If there are three headings, that means that the remaining table data should also consist of three headings as well. You can have more, but I will talk to you about this a little bit later on. So this table data, table data, table data is there, then table data is there. So each cell basically is represented using this TD. Okay, so each cell is defined using this TD or backslash TD. As always, TD stands for table data. Everything between table data, TD tag, and backslash TB data are content that this table cell displays. So everything you write inside this TD is basically displayed by your table data. A table cell can contain all sorts of HTML elements. Do keep this thing in mind, that it does not only need to be text, it can have images, it can have lists, it can have links, and other table elements, or whatever basically we have studied here, you can put inside these tags. So table rows basically are represented using TR. Okay, so each table row starts with a TR tag and ends with backslash TR. So every time we want to insert a TR, basically it will insert a row, and inside the row, the table TD indicates the number of columns or the table cells we want to include. You can have as many rows as you like in the table. Just make sure that the number of cells are the same in each row. Okay, so just make sure that if the first row has 3, the second has the 3, then fourth has the 3. So the consistency follows, it will create a nice looking tables. Table headers, as I said, certain times we do require to create table headers. Okay, so this code indicates that, hey, there's a table header here, and we can use these table headers as an indication that what my table column represent, the data at each table header represents. Okay, so we use th for that purpose, and usually this goes at the first column. Okay, as a first row. So this, each of these are basically first row, so that it appears on the top as a first row, just like we have here. And then we can use them later on in terms of table data to indicate each data element under each row. That's simply how it is. Let's try a few examples of this again from the basics. So if I open this code, this is again a table that we get visible. Let's just create this thing from our own scratch. So if I come back here in our code and go back, and then I say, okay, let me just create a table here. So I say, okay, here's a table and backslash table. Okay, so if I execute this code, nothing appears. Okay, nothing is there because we just created a table. Then in order to create the row, we create something called tr. Okay, this backslash tr indicates a row inside it. So if I run again nothing is displayed because there's no elements, no cells, no data inside the table row. So this currently just indicates one row. Now inside this one row, we indicate something called table data. So if I specify only one table data, backslash table data, that means I only have one data. So this can be my, for example, cell 1. Now if I run it, I will get cell 1. If I want to have more table data, I will just simply come here inside the table row and I will say, hey, I need 2 columns inside it. So this can be my cell 2, and then I can say backslash table row or table data, close it. Then if I execute it, now you see you get 2 cells. Okay, don't worry, we can control the size and everything about it. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Then if you need the second row to appear here, after the first row, we can go and we insert, hey, let me insert a second row, backslash table row, and now we have a 2 rows. So if I execute this code now, see again, the second row does not appear because there is no data here. So without the data, the row basically doesn't make sense. It doesn't appear at all. So now I can have cell 3, for example, and then I can say, hey, backslash td, let me just close it. If I run it, now see what happened, that I, in my first table row, I had 2 columns. Okay, in other words, 2 cells. Then in the in the second row, I just have the third cell. Okay, third data, and only one row or one element has been included here. The next one is just blank. So that's why we always say that to make things more appealing, make sure you have equal number of columns. So this is like column 1, column 2. So in this case, there are 2 cells, but in this case, only one column is there. So we say, hey, let me just include this as well. So I can say cell 4, for example, backslash td. And now I will have, if I run it, I will have the complete data here. Okay, so this is how basically we create. So this is how the hierarchy works. and this is what it's supposed to say. Then let's just control these borders. So this, I don't like these borders. How do we do that? If you move down here in the code, it explains to you that each table has borders, and you can use different styles and different shapes for this border as well. Typically we prefer to use CSS for that. Okay, so we can create a simple CSS for that, indicating that hey, this table is there and I want to have table th td, these basically indicating that I want to apply the style on all of these attributes. Border pixel 1 solid black. So if I run this code, what you will now get is that solid pixel double click 1. Okay, because it has 1. If you want to make it, for example, green, you can change this to green color, and if I execute the code, now I get green color borders. So if I want to make border even more, I can make it 4 pixels, execute, I get a 4 pixels. So we use CSS to control the border elements of this control as well. We can use something called inline CSS as well, or external or internal, depending on what basically you want to do. So in this case, internal CSS has been provided that controls the border width, the appearance of this the border, and other thing. Okay, so coming back to the point, now we have a table border. If I come here, you can use a collapse table borders. For example, to avoid having double borders like in the example above, like we saw in these examples. If you want to avoid that, we can use border collapse property or to collapse. Okay, so for example, if you just want a single line border, you can come here, and in the CSS, we can use a CSS property. Again, this is using CSS. We are saying border collapse dash collapse. So this is a property colon and attribute. Okay, this indicates that I want a border of 1 pixel having a solid, make it black, but this time do not make it double, just collapse it to a single line border. This will create this single line border here. Then there are various different styles that we can use. So if you want to set a background of each of these cells and give border a white color, okay, the same document background, you can get the impression of an invisible border. How to do that? Basically we do here. So we specify table, comma, table header, comma, table data, meaning that we are specifying that each of these elements has a same style. Okay, so each of these elements have the same style, having a border 1 pixel solid white, border collapsed, but the table header and the table data means these individually. Now I don't want to specify the style for the entire table, but I'm going for individual elements, add more elements to it. So we can say background color, and we specify this background color here. Okay, hash decimal. Remember, we have set the border color to be white. So if you just use this white here as a background color, so instead of green, if I use WHITE and run it, now the border becomes white and basically it's not visible depending on the what's the background of the page is. So currently my background of the page is white, so it's white, it's not visible. But if I then make this as a different color of the text, for example, this code here, if I copy it, and then I can say, hey, this one, after this table, I want to apply this. So now my table border becomes this thing. These thick lines are there because we have used 4 pixels here. I can say, hey, 2 pixels. So the border becomes even thick. Now I've said that table header and table data both need to have a background color. If I just want to omit this out, and I can say only table data can have a background color white. So see this, the header is gone, only rows are there. And I can specify this as a separately. So I can say Control V, and then I can say, this table data, remove this. So now only table header identifier has been done. Okay, so this means that the header needs to have a background color. For example, I can say FFF, and if I run this code, please, table header should have a color FFF. If my FF is not working again, it should be, for example, LIGST light gray. If I run it, now it's there. Sorry, the code was incorrect. Usually hashtag FFF should work fine. Anyway, so now see this, my header has a different background color and my content has a different foreground color. So this is basically what it says. You can use a round toggle border as well. Again, CSS is amazing. For more understanding of CSS, do follow this channel. I will be making a complete tutorial sessions of the CSS as well as soon as we complete the HTML course. Then we will move on to CSS, then to JavaScript. So these are basically CSS things that we will be discussing. So in this CSS, we have an option to again make sure the borders are round as well. So we can set in our CSS that, hey, make these cell borders round. That way our borders are round for some purpose if you want to use that. So similarly, skip the border around the table by leaving table. So if you don't want the table border to be round, you can just use these table cell data. So if I copy this and I can say, hey, make this guy round, and if I hit radius, now you see only the table rows, these are round and the header is separate. I can put this in this as well. So now I get this as well. So now you see it's a very nice looking table depending on exactly how you want to design your elements with that. Okay, so skip the border and we can just use table header and table data with the border radius. So border radius will just basically round off the corners. We can use different styles of the tables for that matter as well. So we can use, for example, dotted table, we can use a dash table, we can use a solid. So up till now we have been using solid table. Okay, so at this point, remember border 1 pixel solid. So if you want to make it different styles, no problem, let's just make it from solid to just write down dotted. It will make a dotted table. Dashed will make a dash. By default double is there, which will make a double column. We can make it grooved, reg, inside, outside. If you set it to none, there will be no border. If you make it hidden, the border will be basically hidden. So this is how we can set this up. Similarly, you can set the border color as well. So you can go and specify the border color individually if you want the border color not to be white. Okay, in this case, we have specified the border to be white, but you can write an attribute within CSS saying that, hey, I want a border color to be different color, and specify any color here. The border will basically become that. So this is how we can set the borders and control the border of it. You can change the styles, you can change the color, you can change the roundness, you can change the width using CSS. Many things can be done within our CSS and HTML combinations. Let's move on further with table sizes. Okay, now what do we mean by table sizes? By table sizes means controlling the width of your table. This is again very important. Whenever we're using tables in our system, by default it's occupying an entire page. What happens if I want to reduce the page and have a table of a fixed size or different size columns and XYZ? So we basically now play with something called height and width of our table. Okay, so again the tables can have different sizes for each column, row, or an entire table. So each row can have a different size, each row can have a different style based on what we want to do. Each column can be of a different size depending on what you want to do. So HTML table width, let's talk about this first. Now the HTML table width, in this case, we have specified the style as equals to width colon 100. Okay, so now what this basically will do is that if I run this code, it will by default make sure that the width is 100%. Now remember, this is, we have used percentage here. Percentage basically means that we have specified the 100% of your web page. So no matter what the size or the screen size of your web page is, as you reduce and increase and decrease, you would find the table always occupies 100%. If I set it to 50%, for example, I can say, hey, make sure the table is just 50% of my entire page. So now my table occupies only 50% of my table. So it will automatically adjust and ensure that every time the different screen size is there, table is always 50%. You can use something called px here as well. So I can say make the table 100 pixel. So this will ensure that the table is always 100 pixel of fixed width. So no matter what happens, now the table is always 100 pixel fixed width. So again, we use CSS, but this time we have used an inline CSS. We can use the same attribute here as well, but we have used inline just to ensure that the width is 100%. Okay, so the table column width can also be adjusted accordingly. So if you want to control the width of an individual column, okay, so for example, in this case, I just want to control the individual width. You just need to specify this width attribute in front of that particular column. Okay, so if I need to control the width of this to be 70%, see this, now this becomes 70%. Similarly, rows as well. So I can control the width and height of a row as well. So I can come here inside the table row column, and for each row individually, I can say, hey, this row, make this row 200%. So this row, maybe it has an image, maybe it has a larger content, we want to make it visible. So we just increase the row. So in order to control each component, you just need to use this style is equals to width or height, and then put in front of the relevant tag. So if every attribute has, every row has to be of same width, you just put it in the in front of every row, or use an inline CSS to control that. If individually, just put it inside individual components. Okay, capiche? So basically we are using style height and style width, percentage, or in terms of pixels, depending on how which row, whichever row you want to control, you just use in front of that. That becomes easy with that. Moving on further, let's talk more about table headers. Now table headers are basically these headers or headings that we specify in front of our tables. Okay, but sometimes we need to put a header at the top as well as header at the left corner of the table as well. Okay, so how do we set these headers? We have talked about this, th. That's it, simply. So we use th to define the table headers at the top of our page. So every time we use a table header, it becomes our top header. So first name, last name, age, It's because we have used table header here and we have set it to basically th value. Table data will make sure that you are using the cells inside this table. Th will give us the table header column, as we have discussed. How do we create the vertical table headers? These ones, these vertical table headers. To do that, basically we use the table header with each row. So with each start of the row, we use this table header, table header, table header. What this will do is it will make the first cell of this thing as your header. So if this is my vertical headers, so remember what we have done here is that my table row starts, the first cell is basically table header. So the first cell becomes table header, then we have table data, table data. Next row again starts here, row number 2. First data, first cell becomes last name as table header. So this becomes table header and the remaining becomes normal data. So table data is there. The third row again age. So this is the third row again. Within the third row, the first element is now age as th and the rest becomes table data. That's how we create simply table row and table headers. As simple as that. Okay, so I hope you understand this. Go through some of these other properties. I'm not going to discuss major of components. So I hope you understand how we create tables and how we work with these tables. Okay, next we were going to talk about lists in tomorrow's session. So see you tomorrow, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and follow along so that we can learn HTML together. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In this today's session, we're going to talk about HTML lists, continuing from previous episodes. Previously, we have been talking about HTML, and now we're going to move and talk more about HTML lists. Okay, and then after that, we'll try to do some more examples of how HTML is working before we continue other aspects of it. So let's just begin with it. And if you have been following me and you have been learning HTML with me, don't forget to kindly do subscribe, because as I said, we will be posting complete courses in this channel very soon, from HTML, CSS, JS to all other components using the W3Schools website and many other references as well. So it will be very fun learning coding with this. So let's begin. Now, what are lists? So as it says, HTML list allows web developers to group a set of related items in a particular list. For example, these are two ways of doing it. Each is known as unordered list and this is known as ordered list. Basically, list is like items that belong to a particular heading. So they become a subcomponents of a particular heading. This is what basically it means. And then the way we do it is we have a full dotted, which is known as unordered. So you don't know which is the sequence. You just see this is first, the second, third, fourth. Then they typically don't have numbering with it. But when you do give a numbering to it, it basically becomes an ordered list. So the only difference is the points that we give here. So instead of just giving a dot, a bullet point as we call it, we give it a number or an alphabet or a Roman character, whatever we want to give. Okay, how do we execute this? Let's execute this code. And as you can see within this is that if I come here, we have something called document type. HTML and body is defined. Inside each body, we have written the basic code. Okay, so this is the body area which is visible to the user. Inside the body area, first we have written h2. H2 basically means heading. So this heading is here. As I said, each list typically is a subcomponent, subtext of a heading. Usually that's the big case. So in this case, we have given an unordered HTML list and then we have said unordered. The way we write it is we write an unordered list, which is a UL tag, and closing a UL tag. Okay, so this becomes one body. Inside UL tag, we provide each of these elements. Okay, so list item basically is there, which is first list item. Then we have T as a second list item. Then milk as a third list item. This is similar to what we discussed in tables as well. So in the tables, for each cell item, we give the same tag. Okay, so here basically we use the list item tag. In HTML, we have been using the TD row data tag. Okay, so if you need to create unordered list, this time instead of UL, we write OL as the name basically implies. So UL for unordered list and OL for ordered list. Rest LI are exactly same. Okay, so these component matters not. These are exactly same. They're supposed to be list items within each list item, and you can add as many as you like. As long as you write OL, it becomes ordered, means when they're numbered, and unordered means basically it will have a bullet points or any other symbol that you want. That's the only key difference with it. Okay, so unordered list starts with a UL tag. Each tag list item starts with li tag. So each list item starts with li. and the main tag starts with ul. That's how it basically goes. Ordered list, at the other hand, uses ol, and then again using the same li tag. So internally list items are typically the same. The only difference is ol and ul, depending on what type of list you want. Okay, so that's the only difference that we keep in mind. Then we have something called description list. So also supports HTML also supports the description list. A description list is a list term with a description of each term. Okay, so what basically it means that we define a DL, which is basically description list, and then within description list we have DT, which for example can be anything, and inside DT we have another description. So it's like a list within a list. Okay, a nested kind of a list. So let me show you how I implement this. So if you can see this output here, so we have a main heading. Inside the heading, we have list 1, list 2, and these can be items. Inside each item, we have another sub list. So this basically becomes a list inside a list, or a subheading before a list item, as you can consider. So in order to do that, we use the DL, okay, the DL tag. And inside the DL tag, then we provide the DT tag, which becomes this heading. Okay, and then we define the DD tag, which becomes the sub content inside this thing. So this basically how we represent it. So DT represents the main subheading, coffee or milk. Inside DT, instead of list item li tag, we use the DD tag, which basically creates this sub list item here. If you don't want to use this dash here, remember this dash currently is just used as a text here manually. Okay, so I can just run this code and you will find that we have a list and then it has a subtext there. So again, just for structuring content, that's how HTML works, remember. So the key aspect of HTML is that we use the structuring of content, and this is how we do it. So the DL tag defines the description list. So this DL use the description list. DT tag defines the term name. Okay, so DT defines the name, and the DD tag describes each item within that. So this is the description text. Most commonly, you would find if you look in the websites, the most common tag are unordered list and ordered list. These are like 99% you would try to use them as much as you can. However, at certain issues, you might just need to use this as well. Okay, unordered description list. This is more like an hidden unused tag if you come to it. Okay, so anyway, this is all about lists that we can say. That's it. This is basic idea within it. So if I go back inside in more detail with an unordered list now, so if you click on this link, you can find that we have unordered list. Within this unordered list, we have again the same UL and list items, but there are various styles now. So for example, if I need to change the style of this list item, which by default gives me this what we call bullet point. Okay, if I want to change that, we can use the list style type CSS attribute. Okay, so if I come here and I provide UL as a list, unordered list, and then use inline CSS called style, okay, is equals to, and then use a property list style type colon disk. So what it does is it will create this blank disk for us. So this is basically simple dot or bullet point or a disk as we call it. If you want to change that, you can use a circle, you can use a square, you can use none. Then there will be no list item. So the description tag basically, in other words, you can simplicity use this none and there's no tag behind it. This previous tag that we talk about. So you can change this to here. So if I come and write this, execute this code. So as you can see, we have a disk available, but you can change the style to, for example, setting it to be, hey, let's just move it to none. And if I execute the code, see this, there's no list item here. So you can use this as well, and you can remove the bullet points within this thing. Then moving on forward, you can use, for example, square. So if you, for the reason you want to change the style, you can come here and you can say, hey, let's just use SQUARE, square. Oops, square. And if I execute it, so now instead of bullet points or round disks, we get squares. So you can change the styles to a certain point as well. So you can use a circle, you can use a square, you can use none, and it will basically create none lists. Okay. Similarly, you can obviously use a nested list as well. So a nested list basically means a list within a list. So I can have a coffee, I can have a tea, and then within tea, I can have another sub list as well. To do that, basically the process is exactly the same. Wherever we need a list, we have to use something called unordered list and then list items. That's it. So if T is supposed to be an item or a list indicating certain behavior, then in order to use it, I can just simply say, hey, this is my list item, and then inside this list item I can have a separate list item. So let me just zoom into it. Okay, here we go. So we have a T. T is basically main item. So within this, I need a sub item. So I again use the same UL, list item, list item, list item. So for example, if I have milk and I need a list, another list be underneath the milk, so I can come here and I can say, hey, let's create another list item inside the here, and then we can say list item. For example, cow milk. Okay, backslash li, and then I can say, hey, I let's have and one more item to it. For example, GOAT goat milk, and then we can say backslash li. Okay, and then we can close this ul tag. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Now, what would happen at this point if I execute this course? Now, do remember we have done two things. We have added another list underneath this list item, and then we have created this milk, and this milk closes here. Remember, the closing tags in HTML do make a great emphasis. If you look at the previous example, we have list item T, but there is no closing tag in front of it because the closing tag is somewhere. Oops, the closing tag is somewhere around here. Okay, li, and then inside the T there is a list item. That's what the nested tag means. So inside a tag we have another list, and that's why it is giving us this effect. At this point I have already closed the milk item. What will happen now? So if I execute it, we get this effect here. Okay, we get this nested effect. But this basically means that this is another list inside this main list. Okay, so this is typically not nested under milk. So the best practice or the best way we do it is that we delete this ul, and then to make it a properly part of this milk, see, we close this li tag outside. So now list starts here, has another list inside it, and then the list closes. That's how nested list works. So if we execute it, we get a proper behavior within it. Okay, so it might look just same because it's still creating nested list, but now it knows that this nested list actually belongs to the milk. So inside milk we have a next tag. Okay, so as simple as that. So in nested again means something inside something. So a box inside a box is basically what nested means. To do that, we basically use this nested items. Then similarly we have ordered list. If you create an order list, again same thing, but order we can change the style with it. So that's the key aspect that we need to understand. Again, in order we have an attribute called type. This time we are not using CSS, but we are using something called type because it is more evidently a number. So we're just saying, hey, order list type 1, list item, list item, list item, list item. So type 1 will basically mean that this is a default number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I need to change it to A, I just say, hey, type is equals to A. So if I execute this code, you will find now instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have ABC available. So we can easily change the numbers from type A to small letters. If I use a small letter, so now it will basically say, hey, type is going to be not a capital letter but a small letter, and if we execute it, we get a small letters here. So this is as easy as it goes. You can use I for a Roman number. So if I come back here and instead of type A, we say, hey, let me just use I, click on here, so we get a Roman 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, and then it says, listen, the same risk you can use a smaller lowercase I. So instead of capital letters 1, 2, 3, 4, you can, if you just use type to be a smaller I and execute this code, now you'll get a smaller letters. So you can very easily modify and change this list as well. Control list counting. By default, an ordered list will start from 1. If you want to start counting a specific number, you can use a start attribute. So if you don't want to show number from 1, by default, you can always set it to start 50. So this basically means that if I come here and if I have a number, for example, let me just make it sense in terms of 1, always starts at 1. Okay, it's not because we have written 1 here, it's just 1 is type. Every list we use here will by default always start from 1 or A, similar. But if you use the start attribute, okay, so we say start is equals to bracket start bracket close, and for example 10. So what this will basically mean that now the list starts from 10 instead of starting 1. You can change the starting number with the ordered list as well. Similarly, the nested list works in the same manner as an normal previously as we talked about. Okay, so the two main thing that we need to worry about is type attribute and the start attribute within HTML lists. Okay, so I hope you understand this, and then next we will talk more about uh, inline and block examples. But before that, I want to do an example as well. So hopefully see you next session.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Hi, my name is Dr. Zeeshan, and today we're going to continue our course of HTML.
In previous sessions, we did talk about lists, and now continuing from there, we have something called block and inline. Now, this is something we have touched about in previous lectures as well. Basically, what we're going to talk is HTML has two type of tags. It's not as specific. It's just it's like categories of tags. It's called block tag and inline tags. Okay, so every HTML element has this default display value depending on what type of element it is. So the two most common values that are basically called block tag and inline tag. The block level elements are basically always start with a new line. So whenever we use a block level elements, the basic property they have is that they always start on a new line. The browser automatically adds some space and a margin before and after that element. That's the key thing that we need to work with. So for example, whenever you use a paragraph tag, it is considered as a block tag because before and after each paragraph there's always a space. Okay, similarly div tag is also there. So whenever we use div tags, it always uses something called a space. So whenever I have a paragraph, there is always a space before and after a paragraph, as well as a div tag. So if I create an HTML document that uses paragraph, for example, in this case, we have this paragraph that has a border around it using the CSS style with inline CSS. You can see that it is using hello world and has a space around it. So block tag basically has this basic property with it. There are some various different tags. So every time you use a block tag, we need to understand that okay, whenever I use it, there will be space automatically added before and after it. So other than paragraph tag, we have tags like address, article, aside, block code, DD, div tags. All of these tags are basically used with reference to that there will be automatically space added. This is quite important because whenever we want to structure a content, we have to know that which tag will add a new space or not and how the elements are structured in our web page. Similarly, there is something called inline. So whenever we use an inline tag, basically no space is added. They are used within the same line. So a text like a span. So difference, usually we say the difference between a span and a div is that a div creates a complete div with a new line, and span is basically creating a section within a same tag. So span basically creates a tag within a tag and no line is added. Similarly, we have used tags like bold, like italic, like underline, yeah, like em, like img, like br. They always are considered as an inline tag because they do not add space before or after the tag that has been used. Okay, that's the key difference that we differentiate between block and inline tags. So if I use a div element, it's often used as a container for other elements. Div element has basically no required attributes, but style, class, and all are commonly used with this div tags. Div will add a space after it. Similarly, h2 will add a space after it. Paragraph will add a space after it. So every time I use a div, basically it creates a section, create a components. Within div, we have something called text as in form of heading. So whenever we use heading, we have a space before and after it. Then whenever we use another paragraph, okay, so this is one paragraph here. This paragraph again adds some text to it, but with a space around it. If you use another paragraph tag, it all again will add a paragraph with a new text and a space around it. That's the key thing that we would target whenever we talk about elements of such type. However, if you use a span, then you would see that span tag does not add a new element. So if I create a paragraph, there's a space, but within the paragraph, I have created another span tag. Okay, it just creates a section within our own tags, within our parent tag, and it does not add any space around it. So that's like two type of tags that we have primarily available: block tag and inline tag. Some tags are block, meaning that whenever we use them, there's a space. Inline will basically means there's no space before and after it. That's it. That's the whole block and inline tag aspect within it. Okay, so I hope you understand that. So in next session we're going to talk about the div, classes, and id, hopefully all together. Okay, see you in next session. Hello guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk now about div tags. So in our HTML course we have been talking about HTML elements in detail, and now we're going to talk more about something called the divs. Okay, previously in last session we talked about block code. My name is Dr. Zeeshan. Let's begin learning HTML. In HTML, the div elements are one of the most important elements that you would find. Div element is basically used as a container for other elements. Okay, so div element, meaning that div element is used as a container. So there is no visual representation or visual purpose of it other than the being the container. So whenever we use a div tag, Basically it behaves like a container in which you put other elements, and you allowed div tag to organize and structure and define the complete structure within certain tags. Okay, let me show you an example what exactly I mean. So div element is by default a block element. So do remember that we've talked about block in the previous session, meaning that every time you use a div, it will add a new line, meaning that it takes available width and comes with the line breaks before and after it. Okay, then for example, if I use the div tag here, div elements take up all available width space. So even within my text, if I see this example here, you will find that we have a simple HTML document. We have a document type HTML defining HTML5. We start our page with HTML and we define internal CSS called style tag. Okay, so using style tag, we have defined our internal CSS. We have defined the div, block start, block close, and we have specified it just the background. That's it, nothing else. Now in our body tag, we given a heading one, so we get this heading. We provide some text such as lorem ipsum. Div, within this line we have provided this content here. Now remember, because div is block, no matter where you write, it will automatically come to a new line, add some space, and it will occupy a complete width of your web page. Okay, that's the key aspect of div that we were basically target. Okay, so that's the div tag with it. So how we use div tag is a different aspect to it. So div is a container, okay, and div element has no required attributes technically, like style, class, id, and basically are common. So it does not contain its own elements, own attributes. You use other attributes like style, class can also be used with these things. So how does div work? Basically we use div to create and design components within our HTML. So what you see here is that this yellow border is entirely a container area. Within that container we provided London and then text here. How does this work? So for example, if I come here, we defined a body in our tag, we define a heading, HTML div tag. So this is outside the div. Within my div, I said, hey, this is a container. This container contains some content, some text, some information, some representation. How is supposed to happen? So we say heading 2, we give paragraph, we give paragraph. So look at this, how it is appearing. So it has a completely different structural representation as compared to a normal content. So if you don't use div, you still get a component. So for example, if I just delete the div here and delete this div here, okay, and then I run the content, so you see it just appears a normal thing. As soon as I use the div again, okay, and if I come back here, if I use the div, hit run, I just get this visual representation in form of background color, which is, by the way, because I have set div style in my heading tag. So in my style here, I have specified that, hey, this, there's a div in my content. This div is block start, block close, will have a property called background color. So div is basically like a container. It's like a grouping multiple items together, and then we can obviously give certain styles to it to make it look more appealing and more interesting. This is a commonly done. So even in this web page, if you see this example, this has a particular div around it. Inside div, we have one heading, we have text, then this itself is another div. Okay, so this div has a different style to it. Then we have another heading, then there's another div here that has a border and a content inside it. So div are basically used to structure components within our web page. They can be nested, and then we use it to organize our structure very easily. Similarly, we basically use div for many different purposes as well. We can use div with our certain CSS properties like width, like margin, okay, to set up how big or small the width we want. So for example, in this case, if you want the width to appear at the center of the page, we use these certain properties. So let me show you what exactly I mean. Again, now these are CSS properties. Okay, CSS meaning that we specified the CSS styles and control the div's position and size. So the content is same. We use body. Inside the body, we have a center aligned div element as a heading. Then we use a div with the content that we had previously done. But this time what I've done is I've given it a width. So I've said, hey, width is supposed to be 300 and margin supposed to be automatic. So auto will basically allow it to center it at the center position, with width specifically specifying it as 300 pixels alone. I can set it to more. For example, if I say 400, now it means the div has more space. I can say width a margin, for example, only 20 pixels. That basically means that now the margin will be only 20 pixels from the left, okay, from this side. I can specify that it can be different, blah 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 things, and so many controls we can use using our CSS. But this is basically what a div tag is. It provides us this control of div. We can use multiple div tags. Again, just like any element within HTML, do remember that there can be multiple div tags multiple tags of any sort. So in our page we can have multiple content, and each div has a different color, different background. So it's like a container. You can use multiple containers, and you can give different styles to your divs, different styles to your container. You can position them, you can alignment them, and by controlling div, one single div, you basically control the whole structure. So in this case, you can see this. If I have used this, I have a div, three different divs in my content. Okay, so in this point we have div 1, div 2, div 3, three different divs are used. If we come here, we specify the control content. So we have div 1, div 2, div 3 available within my code. Each div has this inline css called style. Inline css, they have a different backgrounds. That's all it does takes. Okay, but whenever we want to specify a style of div, we basically use inline or internal bit, depending on how we want to do that. So this time it indicates we have three different container, that's all. But if we want to use it, for example, in this case, alignment div elements by side, to do that again we use certain other elements of divide of div specifying, such as the containers and floating values, that would ensure that the div appear on a particular site. So for example, if I try this code out, now what we have done is that we have used the class attribute to specify what our div is supposed to do. So now what we have done is we have created one main div, and inside that main div there are three separate divs. Okay, and then we have used the div as by container, and we have provided its properties. So now how it works is that this is one container as a div, which basically means that there's a one major container behind it. Within that div container, we have now created three other containers that reside within this particular div component. Okay, so this div is there, inside there are three more containers, no problem with that. The outer container or the parent div is known as my container. We have assigned it a class. So in my code, we have said that my content is supposed to be my div, and this my container is my div. It has 100% width, so it's going to take the entire web page area. Overflow auto will, this means that all its subcomponents will automatically overflow in a single line. Okay, then the child divs that we have created here, we were going to set their width to 33%, 33%. So it's basically dividing our web page in three different columns. Okay, so more about this CSS in detail when we start to work with CSS components, and we start to work with these overflows and basically these margin areas and floating points. Only then you would be able to understand this more clearly. So do follow along, and I will be talking about the CSS much more detail later on in the sections. Okay, so this is in a nutshell a simple description of what div tag does for us. Thank you for watching. See you in next session. Don't forget to subscribe, please.